Y'all would like to grab a seat so we can get started?
All right, we're going to call to order the May 22nd, 2025 Town of Somerville Design Review Board. The first order of business would be approval of the April 24th, 2025 minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. First item under old business is 918 West 5th South Street.
Okay, so this project has already been before y'all. It received final approval upon staff's final DRB inspection. There were a few items that were modified in the field. One of them being the standing seam metal roof. The other being not within the conditions, but within the approved plan set. Get to those. There's a roof return on the front and rear elevation. You can see at the bottom of the screen that was not completed, as well as the capital detail at the top of the columns. However, staff feels that these changes, due to the nature of the building with the eave overhang and the building being prefabricated, made sense for those changes. As far as the roof, that was a discrepancy between, it appears, our former zoning administrator when reviewing the plans, because as you can see, the plans do call out PBR metal panel rather than a standing seam roof. If you have any questions, do we have anyone here to? Okay. But if you want me to go over the changes again, I'm happy to. I have included some pictures in here. Again, here's the PBR roof. Again, not standing seam, but that style roof. And then you have to actually go very close to the building to see the top of these columns. And you can see here the roof return is not present.
So Becca, my understanding is this building has been built, that the note on the drawing matches what was built. It was just call it a typo in the meeting minutes or staff notes.
Yeah, the zoning administrator, when reviewing the plans, must have missed that PBR detail versus the standing seam. And then again, the roof return, as I understand it, when I went out on site and talked to the contractor, was that the nature of the roof slope wouldn't allow for the roof return to be installed as designed. And again, this is a prefabricated building.
Okay. Understood. I'd like to make a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All
I have a
those,
comment.
sure.
So out of the items that were not built, are there any things that can be modified to be built and added? Like it seems like the column capitals be easy to get the appearance.
I'm not a builder, but again, you wouldn't be able to see the column tops because the roof eave.
I think my only issue is precedence. I mean, what's to prevent a future applicant from getting DRB approval? And then through some error or some reason, it doesn't get built that way? Aren't we setting a precedence here?
Maybe Mr. Halter can speak to those changes.
I was hoping you'd let me get away with not having to speak. It was not a matter of the contractor not wanting to do it or not doing it. It was kind of a means and methods situation where a prefabricated building and the way the roof returned. I'm sure they would have been more than happy to put the capital on top of the columns, but it functionally didn't work that way. And as far as the PBR roof, I think the comment should be standing seam. I don't remember that being a comment made by the DRB, but by the zoning administrator at the time. And certainly the phrasing of should be standing seam leaves shall would have been much more desirable in that situation. But again, it was a prefab building and that's the roof provided by the building manufacturer.
I'm certainly not suggesting that you tear down anything, but if there are things you can add.
I don't know how
And-
either of those two items could be added without deconstructing the building to some large degree. There were actually many changes that were made and coordinated through town staff. Most of which has to do with the widening of Highway 78 and sidewalks and handicap ramps, which because of the widening and DOT permitting just weren't permissible. So it's not like the contractor went out and just built what he was going to build and, never mind what the town wants. There was a lot of coordination. I think these were items that were purely overlooked both by the contractor and by the town staff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next is 105 Midland Parkway.
All right, so this project is coming before you requesting final approval. This is a new construction of a comeback shack restaurant. The applicant has provided updated architecture. However, the architect was not present at the previous meeting to go over the architectural updates in detail. So the applicant will need to advise on specific elements that have been incorporated or changed. The updated landscaping plan does not meet the conditions of 8.5.2 and 5.3 in a few areas, but staff is willing to work with the applicant if y'all are willing and comfortable with the final architecture to handle that at a staff level before site permitting is issued. We would like the applicant to address the rear vegetative buffer being removed as well as the trees fronting Midland Parkway. And again, if the DRB feels that the updated architecture is acceptable and final approval is appropriate, the town staff and arborist will work with the applicant. Bike parking will need to be added prior to site disturbance permits from the town. I'll hand it over to Elliot.
Okay, so redevelopment of a former car wash for drive-through and eat-in restaurant. We've looked at this site plan before. A couple of things site-wise from last meeting was the attempt to keep along the frontage in the left half of the site some existing magnolias and crepe myrtles. They were too far into the site. We would have ended up with a one-lane road or one-way drive. And that would have been tight. We were coming into the curbed area by quite a bit, so couldn't do anything with that. So what you see there is the brick lattice wall would be continuous across the front rather than picking up at some point, which the more we thought about it, the more that probably would look odd. Starting in the middle of the site to create the wall screen, but we do have landscaping in front of that wall and, some short ground cover, call it monkey grass or something along the backside of the wall to the curb for driving internally. So if that addresses the frontage along the rear, that existing back there is the clump bamboo and not necessarily what we want to leave behind, because the non-invasive clump bamboo is also growing up in the center of the site. So we could get away from the bamboo and then we'll plant some new vegetation back there. Yeah, there is a water easement back there that provides the fire protection for the publics. So shrubberies would be all that we would look to do along that rear property line between the parking area of Publix and our site. No trees to be planted in the water easement. That's about what we can do. Okay, any other anything else that you were bringing up on the landscape wise?
No, as I mentioned before, Justin and I are comfortable working with you on the final details of the landscaping plan through the site disturbance review. And I think that other than the bike parking, that covered my comments about the site. And if the board doesn't have any further comments about the site, we could move into architecture.
Yeah, and as you can see on the plan, we've got a continuous wall, a break for the entrance road as well as the walkway coming out. And then on the landscape plan, it's shown landscaped across there with the wall. And obviously I didn't take up enough time for the architect to arrive if he's coming, so that might be the end of the meeting, unless if you've looked at the architecture and you've got concerns and comments, I'd be happy to take those back. If you want to wait, if you have concerns that you want to address with the architect, then we have to we'll bring him back, try to bring him back again. So
Do you think the architect is on the way?
I have not heard but there've been a kind of a third party that's been trying to arrange those communications rather than us directly. I could sit down and find out, and then if he does, we can come back up if you want to work it that way.
Can we pause this applicant?
Yeah. We could, if someone could just make a motion to defer your decision until the architect either arrives or a subsequent meeting
Or later in this meeting?
or later in this meeting.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we have the terminology wrong, but we pause this until later in the meeting for
Okay.
better review.
All right.
Any further discussion? I'll say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Sawmill Center Road.
All right, so this project was previously before you for conceptual review of a new Huntington Bank over in the Sawmill development. The applicant will need to advise on their response to conceptual comments received from the board. I summarized those below. Additionally, bicycle parking will need to be added to the site per the UDO. And as this is a preliminary request, I don't have any further comments, but just as a reminder, a finalized landscaping plan and photometric plan are required before submitting for final approval.
Hello, I'm Milton Thomas. I'm the developer of Sawmill Center. We are here this afternoon to present a revised version of what you saw last month for Huntington. We have spent a considerable amount of time and effort to address y'all's concerns from the last meeting. And I think, at least from the developer's standpoint, we feel like we meet the design guidelines of Sawmill Center from the Edge Commerce. So we wholeheartedly support this revision. And I'm going to turn it over to Terrace with Gensler and let him walk you through it.
Good afternoon, everyone. So maybe we can first talk about the site and adjustments that we have made, and then we can turn over to the architecture if you don't mind. So in this image, you see the two site layouts that we have looked at. Based on the previous comments, we heard that there was a suggestion to potentially remove that drive lane in front of the building. And the layout on the right is doing that. After further considering this layout, design team and the developer team felt that maintaining the drive lane in front of the building still had a privilege in terms of the circulation around the site. So we'd like to maintain that and propose to keep it the way it is. A few other things we have also looked at. There was a comment about that specialty paver area in front of the building and the plaza feel like that we are creating there. We have looked at the connection to the greenway, and you can see that we are suggesting for the greenway to curve a little and connect in front of the building. And there's going to be some renderings that you will see further down the presentation that we have explored of how that connection can be made and how we can make that intentional. Another thing that was mentioned last time about the grade elevation and changes from the street to the building, we did look at the site survey and the grading, and the building is about 5 feet down from the street level. It is the street curb a little bit further out than the Parker's Kitchen site is because of how the lane cutting in. But we feel that even with that, we can still make that this project work and make it feel inviting from the greenway. One other thing that we have also looked at is the comment that was made last time about the rotation of the building, to consider that. And we have also looked at that, and what the concerns that we had was that when we rotated the building, there was just only 88 parking spots that would be at the front of the building. The rest of the parking spaces would be beyond the driveway, so beyond the lane. So we just felt it was not super safe to have all pedestrian walk across. And another thing too, this is the main entry to the development. And again, we'll see further down in the presentation, the orientation of the Parker's building, where their facades, the gable facades are facing the street. So we felt in the context of the adjacent site, this orientation was still desirable. And also it helps to frame this entrance to the development at this main intersection. We can probably go to the next slide. Right, so this is just enlarged site plan depicting the updated layouts and a few adjustments that we have made, especially at the front of the building. Then we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is the grading plan, and you can see again that there is about 5-foot elevation drop from the edge of the curb at the road to the finished floor elevation of the building. Go to the next slide. So these are the utilities on the side that we're anticipating.
Are the stairs from Berlin Myers sidewalk meant to be continuous? Or I thought on a rendering you actually broke that up. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The sidewalk at the intersection.
Along Berlin Myers?
Stairs.
The steps,
Oh, the stairs.
those steps.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, in the rendering is correct. So we are proposing, I mean, in the renderings, we're showing them broken up correctly. So
So which is the correct?
yeah,
or-
the broken up version. Yeah, this is a simplified site version.
Are we looking on our screen? Is this what you're proposing to build?
The stair.
You propose to build this with those long continuous steps going up to the parkway?
So not exactly. So in the renderings, you will see further down that we were exploring an option to have planters in the middle of the staircase to make it a little bit more inviting. And yeah, there is another rendering, but essentially, yeah, the idea would be to break it up, so it's not going to be continuous. Right, yeah. So we will update the site plan to reflect the renderings. Are there any site questions that you guys want to talk about? And then, or I can just keep moving and go into the architecture of the. Yeah, this is the preliminary landscape plan.
Like I thought I saw on the intro letter that they're asking for conceptual. Okay. So the plan has to be correct. So, so I think we're all kind of the consensus, those stairs need to be wider. We like the rendering more. I have a question about the transformer location. That's where a tree would normally go. Can that
Okay.
transformer go maybe across into that big landscaped area?
It can, yes.
And I would ask that on a site plan standpoint, the landscaping be more creatively designed. Looks like it's just there wasn't a whole lot of thought behind it. Typically we recommend having a brick screen wall along the frontage road or along that side street. So just explore that. So I don't know what that side street is called. I saw it earlier, I think, but the street that comes from Berlin Myers, the driveway. So look at that. Typically we like a brick wall and or a hedge. I like to see less grass and more landscaping, just more environmentally sensitive and more shade. It looks like there's trees missing and parking lot islands. It just needs to have much more thought behind it. But also consider, like I said, moving the transformer.
Right.
Any other comments on site?
Do you anticipate any kind of pedestrian or bicycle traffic coming from the interior of Sawmill to use the bank? Or is everyone driving to the bank, even if you lived in a in the resident units. And if you are anticipating pedestrian traffic or bicycle, you should provide some kind of crosswalk within your site or some direction. Right now, they would have to cross either through the driveway or through your landscape area, which we know they won't.
Understand? Yeah, we can look into that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments on site? And this will have a dumpster.
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I see a dumpster enclosure, but this will definitely have a dumpster versus
It
I know
will be,
some banks don't like dumpsters, but
right,
just
yeah, we're planning
verifying.
to do it out of brick.
Okay.
Similar to Parker's, yeah, that's what they have there as well.
And Peter, what was your, I'm trying to take notes. Peter, what was your comment about pedestrian?
Have some kind of access from the internal
Oh, from
sawmill
the internal, okay.
versus just Berlin Myers.
We got access up the driveway if you want to get in.
You're walking from the medical building, from Parker's.
And do, I
That's
don't,
what the steps are for off the parkway, right?
well, not from within the center.
Oh, within the center?
Yeah.
I'm talking about all this.
And verify with staff that you don't need to ramp
Yeah.
from Arlen Myers. Usually you have to have some kind of ramp to the, if there's that much grade change, there usually is a ramp from the public sidewalk down. Verify with staff. If that's needed or not. Yeah,
Okay.
ADA accessibility. Um,
Okay, yeah, we'll check that.
okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, great. And then, so we will move into discussing the site and the architecture of the building. So the image right there, yes, we have looked at the site context and put together some of the images of the existing buildings and surroundings. So there is a relatively new residential development at the top left, the Claiborne. It looks like it's all white building there. The rest of the building seems to be older structure that have brick, stucco material, sloped roofs for the most part that are standing seam and that they have, blue or green colors. There are some flat roof structures as well. And then on the sawmill development side right now, Parker's is completed, like we know, and then the Roper building is going up. And then the next image to the right there, thank you. This just gives you the context of the sawmill development itself. So again, Parker's is next door. The Roper building is further to the left. And then right behind our site is the residential complex. And those structures using the mixture of materials, including brick and light color siding. Yeah, so then this these renderings also just show you the aerial rendering of a composition of how the Parker Kitchen building is and located and the scale of it, and then Huntington building right across the street in terms of the scale and the location. And again, just going back to the comment of rotating the building, that's where we felt that gable facades are facing the street made sense to us, to the design team.
Can I ask a question, please? Sorry to interrupt. On this lower left-hand rendering between the building and the pedestrian path, there's pavers all the way along the front in the street. And then there's pavers between the curb and building. Do you think those pavers are necessary versus removing the pavers and putting more landscaping and green, both on that side and on the, between the steps? What's the design considerations there?
Thank you. Yeah, we can consider that.
Okay. Just soften the work towards softening the building a little bit so it doesn't
Right.
look so harsh.
Understand. Thank you. And yes, and then this picture shows the greenway at Parker's, and then how we're trying to respond to that and use similar language to how it is treated. And then so for this image here, that's where we drawn some similarities from the adjacent structures and what architectural elements we could use. So for the light color facades we are proposing, we've been referencing the Claiborne complex. They are all white structure. And then the residential complex behind this building, again, it has brick, but also it has light colored materials on it as well. So we understand from the sawmill design guidelines, it is approved to use lighter colors. And then for the roof itself, from the color perspective, again, like I mentioned, we noticing the adjacent buildings there are using branded color roofs, which are light blue and then dark green. So we felt that that would be consistent with the surrounding to use the dark green roof here. And then we can also, I'm going to invite Nick to also from Huntington Bank. He is here with us today to talk about the Huntington brand and the importance of colors that we're proposing to use in this building.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here.
What's your name again?
Nick Coventry. I'm
Nick
with
Coventry.
Huntington Bank. I Vice President Construction for them. So yeah, just a little bit about us, know we're kind of new here into the Somerville area, but we identified you guys out of 50 new builds as an excellent place for us to come. Our company was founded in 1866 in Columbus, and we've expanded for years after that. And really, it's our first 2 sites in both North Carolina and South Carolina opened just a few weeks ago. So this expansion's new and it's happening fast within like 3 years. So we're looking to spend about $250 million in expansion throughout the states. So very exciting times for us, for sure. We currently just went through a whole rebrand. That's why you see a lot of green on the buildings and different colors. So we've been working hard to try to make sure that we can really get our new identity like kind of out there and visible for everybody to see. So as far as kind of part of who we are, drive-throughs are very big for us, as you can see. I know that concerned you guys with the orientation of the building, but right now, 50% of our transactions actually come through those drive-throughs. So where you might see others taking them down, we're still building them because it's very much a part of who we are. So just want to at least give a little bit of context to that as well. So that's about all I really have, but thank you guys. Again, it's an honor to be here. And yes, sir.
Appreciate you coming. One question, you said you had sites already under construction in South and North Carolina?
We had
Or
two, we
built?
have several that are actually, I've got one starting next week. We've got 2 that just finished, one in Spartanburg.
Spartanburg?
Yep, that one just opened a few weeks ago. And then we have one in North Carolina that just opened in Charlotte area. So
Okay.
yeah, so we're looking to expand all over Raleigh, Charlotte, Greenville, here all over Charleston as well. So
Good.
yeah,
Glad to have you.
yeah,
Thanks for the
sure.
background.
Very glad to be here. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have some questions.
Yes.
Are you,
Sorry, go ahead. Are you questioning the architect or?
either can jump in with the answer. Are you concerned about the floor to ceiling glass on the south elevation in Somerville? Overheating the space up without any sunshade? And it looks like a little sunshade that you have, if this is an accurate rendering, it's going to get very hot in there.
Mhm.
And so when buildings get hot that are glass, they usually end up putting ugly blinds and stuff like that. So if this is an issue that you are concerned with now, I think now is the time to address a permanent solution versus an emergency interim solution.
Completely understand. Scrim shades would be a good idea. We'll take that note back for sure.
And then my second comment is, how big is this logo? Do you have any dimensions or idea?
The one on the side where the lettering is, right?
The logo
Right. On the front facade, on the
on the front
right.
elevation.
That one is probably about, sorry. Yeah, that one is about, I would say, 8 feet tall. 8 feet.
It by it. It by it, right?
Does it need to be?
Roughly. Correct.
Okay.
So the question is, does it need to be 8 feet tall? I think we can see that. I think we brought this up the last time that we felt like this was a little bit large for that side. So maybe if it could be a little bit smaller. I also, if we're going to talk about the aesthetic part right now, if Becky, can you go back to the picture that just shows the design, just what the building's going to look like? What the actual building would look like. Yeah. So last time we did look up your bank and we looked at pictures of places that you've built in other areas. And we do know that green is your logo. We're all right with that. But what I would ask is that you would, if the green, like on the planters and green on the parking lot, if we could not, I know that's your logo, I know that's your business, but if we could keep the green on the building, but not around the building, does that make sense? We don't need green planters and we don't need green painted cement around. Does that make sense?
Especially the walls along Berlin
Correct. We
Meyer.
don't need that on the
I
walls.
don't know if you
And
see this on
yeah,
the public way.
That's a good point.
perhaps, I mean, I think the Huntington Bank on the dark background shows up very well. People will be able to see that. So maybe if your logo on the side was a bit smaller, that's just something to consider,
Well,
I
if you
think.
go with like a 4x4 logo and then put a gable vent, so it would make the building more attractive.
Yeah.
A gable vent in the gable to make the building more attractive, and then a more reasonable size 4x4 logo.
Yeah.
Drop down below the gable vent.
Is that logo internally illuminated?
Yes, it is.
So you should be able to see. I mean, I think with all that, it'll be very visible from the road. So,
At night it will be illuminated. Yes,
Sure.
and then
absolutely.
daytime.
When we were looking at the pictures of previous locations or existing locations that you guys have, another thing that we noticed was a lot of times you had the logo in the proprietary lime green, and then in like the name, the actual text was often in white. I don't know if that's
That's an older, yeah, that's.
Yeah, if that's
This is where our.
pre-rebrand or whatever. I just think you'd still get that contrast that you're looking for. If the text was white, it would match the sides.
Then your logo on the front would be green, logo on the side would be green. You've got your green elements, but maybe the Huntington Bank in white,
It's a recommendation.
just a record. I know that, again, it's your brand.
Yeah, we understand the context of the corporate brand and everything.
And what is the white brick? Is that a painted white? Is that a glazed white? What is that?
It is a cream color brick, so but it's not painted. It would be integrated in internal, integrated color to the brick, so it's not going to be painted. So the only painted part of the brick would be where it be the dark green portion and where the dark Huntington Bank is. So
Oh,
that
that's
part
brick?
will be
Okay.
painted brick, correct?
I know I typically discourage white brick because Somerville is a brown brick town. We've approved a few in the past, and I think we've approved enough. We don't need more white brick buildings. That would be my feeling about the white brick, unless you have some historical precedent, or that was brick made on the brick plant that was nearby, or something. But I think not everything has to match exactly out there, and I can respect that. But I'm not a fan of white brick.
Understand.
I thought I saw in some subsequent photos of the other Huntington brick banks that you had a combination of brown and white. Can you go to some of those photos?
Right. I mean,
I think there were photos of other Huntington banks.
well, so right, there is a picture on the elevations, I think, where the building elevations are. We have put in the picture of standard bank branch. I think it's next page at the bottom. And so one of the reasons why we are proposing white brick because again, that's what typical standard is for the bank. So we're trying to maintain some of that standards in language in architectural respect. So that's why we're proposing that same cream color brick for this building as well. And like I was trying to allude before, that there seems to be light colored elements and materials used in surroundings. So that's where we felt that it will fit well within the context of the site and the surrounding area, but also still maintain the branding integrity of the project and also bring some variation to the site materials and to the building.
I think since you're kind of new to the area, for me, there's a kind of a quiet sophistication to the Charleston region and the Low Country. And that's used in kind of simple materials, good massing. I think the massing is on target. I think I'm not a fan of the white bricks. I don't think it's regionally accurate. I don't think there's necessarily historical precedents. And I think there's an overuse of green, which it strikes me as a little garish. And I've seen on some of the pictures, those online, that sometimes those green bands are all illuminated. So if they aren't, I don't think we would support the illumination of the green. But I think you're on target with the massing, you're on target with roof pitch, the ends of the buildings. I think there's just some material changes that for me, would make this look better. I think the colors are say the darker roof, it almost looks like a Charleston green. I think it's slightly different. I agree with, I prefer the white letters over, even on the lower left, that looks a little more sophisticated than everything green. The green bollards, I mean, that's just a little too much green. I mean, I get the branding, but it's Huntington Bank. We get it. Not everything has to be green, just like not everything with McDonald's has to be yellow or red or, whatever. So I think there ought to be a reconsideration of the branding, or maybe that's not the right word, but just kind of the use of green.
Understood.
Any other building comments, Candy?
I think you should look into Charleston Green. If this, I don't know, do you already have banks built this way in South Carolina with this dark color?
One of our,
I mean, are you familiar with what Charleston Green looks like?
right now.
It's almost black.
It's almost black, but it has tints of green, so it's almost
Almost like that.
similar to that, and that would make a lot more sense
Okay.
here. Yeah, I mean, it's almost very similar. So I would say if you just went to Charleston Green or black, whatever it's called.
We can try, we'll take a look how close that is to the brand
Right.
color and,
You want to see this? That's basically close to Charleston.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very close. The hue is a little off.
I'd go with red brick.
Well, as a developer, let me interject.
We just have to be able to hear you.
We've got 4 more out parcels along the front. We're not looking to do with every building the same. We're trying to create, which is why we did the design guidelines that
Yep.
y'all approved.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're looking for a little bit of variety
Mm-hmm.
outside of red brick.
Sure.
So that's why we have approved what they've brought to you today, to create that little bit of variety that had some interest other than just repeating
I agree.
red brick.
I
And
don't think-
white brick's been used plenty
Yeah.
in the Low Country. You see it all over downtown. You see it on plenty of plantation houses. So there's plenty of precedent for white brick, in my opinion.
I hear you. I don't think,
All the green is really the issue. Yeah, just kind of step back on that.
and it, and another comment's made, make it red brick. If you look on Main Street, there's all kinds of bricks that are not all the same. I think white is such a contrast. Just something I'm gonna ask you to take a look at. You know, I think that's the issue, is it's so contrasting. If it was red and brown, then, you know, kind of looks native to the region. That,
We approved a lot of white brick on Trolley Road recently, and they all look bad. All of them.
and we hear about it.
Well, the buildings look good, you know, mass and all the buildings, it's just a white brick.
All right. Anything else you'd like to talk about architecturally?
No, I think we covered all of it. So thank you for your comments.
I have a couple of questions then. Why the stacked bond panels on the east elevation and on the north elevation? Are you doing something special with that?
Take the place of windows.
You changed the brick pattern.
Oh, the brick pattern. Okay. Right. So I think last time we heard the lack of details. So we have introduced some brick patterns, essentially just trying to emphasize, and, you know, where we have the blank facade, we just try to introduce different brick patterns to add details. We looked at what Parker's building looks like and try to, you know, take some cues from that. And then also we are proposing the trellis there on the side where the large, you know, the door is, the back door is. So that was just an attempt to add some architectural detail to the brick. Does that answer your question?
It answers the question. I don't know if you're successful in that, though. You may want to take a look at that
It looks like.
and enhance it. It looks like you just changed the pattern of the brick for no reason. If you have intention of putting some trellis or some piece of architecture or something, then you should show it. Otherwise,
Or what about if it looked like a bricked in window or something?
Or a trellis would be
Something.
nice, and then
Well,
you
it
have
looked like
natural
brick
green,
besides is changing
not
the brick
painted
pattern.
green. You could have a trellis with natural green on the side, which would be very beautiful.
Right. Yeah, which is what one of those areas is proposing. I mean, it will take time to grow.
Any further discussion? They're asking
Preliminary.
for preliminary approval. I know we've talked about a lot of things, but would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion for preliminary approval, grant.
Okay,
Not comments made.
preliminary motion with the comments made. Can I read them back? We talked about enhanced, I'll call it enhanced landscape plan. Perhaps a screen wall along the roadsides. Consider moving the transformer, stairs more closely matching the rendering, and staff will give you this too. Look at pedestrian interconnectivity, including ADA accessibility and how it relates to the adjoiners and public realm. Reducing the pavers between the steps in the building and the wall, reducing the,
To add more landscaping there.
yeah, to add more landscaping. Consider the shading because it's not hot yet. Just want y'all to remember that. It's only 92. Yeah. The logo, consider reducing that on the ends instead of that 8-foot logo. Yeah, the shading, louvers, and Bill mentioned the
Well, louvers in the gable end.
In the gable ends, right.
Added.
Okay. Limiting the amount of green, and we prefer it not to be illuminated. Consider white letters. Reconsider the brick patterning, I would say, so it has more intentionality. Anything else? So those are the items you want them to consider then, Bill?
No lime green wall.
No lime
retaining
green,
wall
yeah.
Along Berlin Myers.
Just green throughout, yeah. Right. So that was a motion with conditions. Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Sawmill Center Road.
Okay, this project is coming before you. The applicant has requested final. However, typically, and I included this in my staff report, this project has not been before the Tree Protection Board. So formally within the process, when DRB grants final approval, that's a vested approval. So we typically don't allow final approval to be requested because if something changes with the Tree Protection Board, it can cause site changes and trigger the project coming back before y'all. So if you are comfortable with where the architecture is at this time, staff would advise that y'all condition your final approval with a prerequisite that the Tree Protection Board finds that specific grand trees are to be maintained rather than removed, encroached upon. The applicant cannot receive vested DRB approval until the Tree Protection Board has granted final approval for the project. The applicant will need to advise on how their most recent submittal addresses the comments from the previous meeting, which I have summarized in the staff report. Bike parking will need to be added. We've kind of discussed that before, but just prior to receiving site disturbance permits from the town. And I will hand it over to the applicant.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Neela Snyder. I'm covering for Rob Hamby. His son is graduating, so I will try to answer all the questions that you might possibly have. I used to be a resident in the area, so I'm super excited to be here. Also, I'd like to share that being a past resident, we started off this project with the concept of the flower town in the Pines. We felt very strongly about the design, and we appreciate all of the comments that were made the past couple of times, specifically about the grand trees. So the design team went back to the drawing board and we revisited. So we would hopefully we're going to keep our fingers crossed that all of the changes that were made will be in alignment with what you're expecting. With that, can we quickly go to the progress tracker? So we can quickly go through the comments. But high level, just to remind everybody, Somerville Medical Center, they wanted this parking garage to provide adequate parking for their staff and physicians. The parking garage is centrally located in the campus. Most of the concerns from when we presented last in March, was about the western parking lot and all of the grand trees. So going back to the comments that were made, is it okay if I go through how we've addressed it and then we can go through the slides? Perfect. So address parking surplus on site. What we did was we greatly reduced the parking, and we are showing a temporary gravel parking just large enough to meet the parking needs when the garage is under construction. The adjacent lot that was purchased, we have left that piece of property as is, and all of the reconfiguration that we did for the parking is keeping the grand trees as much as possible. So you will see in our updated drawings that the grand trees are all there. Second comment, preserve as many grand trees as possible. We can walk you through the changes, but a large proportion of the grand trees have been preserved. The west parking lot, the request was made that each island needs 2 trees. We have made sure that we have 2 trees at every island. Treat entry drive as a street lined on both sides. Being a past resident, I personally love that comment. So we made sure that we added more trees and additional landscaping and plantings. We also extended the sidewalk from our campus to Midland Parkway. We also made sure that the west parking lot, we broke it up into smaller sections as opposed to a sea of parking. We provided more shade by adding additional trees, and also because we've kept the existing trees, hopefully that should provide the much needed shade, especially in Somerville. Increased buffer at the drive at the north section of the lot. We reconfigured that area when we redid the parking lot. So yes, that 13-foot separation has been provided between the main drive and the proposed parking lot. enhance pedestrian experience along the south edge of the garage. Due to site constraints, there is an existing fence, and when we go through the slides, I'll point it out. There is an existing fence that that separates between our adjacent property and our property. So if we were to move the parking garage north, we go into a floodplain issue. If we move the garage any other way, any other direction, we go into a huge regrading issue as well. So what we did, because I personally agree with what is being requested, we maximized all of the landscape plantings along that sidewalk. So we improved the pedestrian access as, a patient is or a family member is walking down that sidewalk. Landscaping should match the renderings. Absolutely, we went ahead and took care of that. And you will see in the updated landscape layout, it's been greatly improved upon. We've also included a night rendering to reflect what the parking garage will look like at night. Clarify purpose of the metal elements. So going back to the flower town in the pines, our concept kind of also went back to the forest canopy. So the perforated metal panels is almost mimicking the light filtering through a forest canopy. Also in terms of security, since it has perforations, you can see what's happening as a person is going down the stairwell. Also, because the stairwell and the main entry into the garage are the only locations where we have the perforated metal panels, it kind of accentuates and highlights that that's where you have pedestrian and vehicular traffic. It calls a little more attention to it also for signage and wayfinding. Concerned about ADA parking, Rob Hemby did talk to Rebecca Brown. So the existing inpatient hospital per code, it needs to meet 2%. The outpatient requires 10%. And Rebecca did agree that, we comply with the 2% requirement. And then last but not least, the request for bicycle parking. We did talk to the facility and we kind of did a survey of how many bicycle parking they have currently. And they said that it's being greatly underutilized. They have maybe 1 or 2 bicycle parking that is being used. And that's a big maybe. So the facility has requested if we can vary from this requirement from the board. Any questions before we quickly jump through the slides? Because I know I've been talking a lot. Yeah, we can quickly zip through it. And this is the parking garage, which is directly across the main entry of the hospital. So we wanted that aligned as well. So somebody can park their car and directly walk across that lush garden that we have created straight into the main doors of the hospital. Okay, moving on. Keep going. These are some of the studies that we did in terms of connection, making sure there's a good presence, as well as making sure that it contextually fits within the history and character of Somerville, as well as it ties back to the existing hospital. Okay, keep going. Okay, I think these were some of the views that were requested previously, so we can keep going. That was some of the architectural nod that I was referring to earlier about the flower town in the pines. Going. Okay, let's pause on this slide for a second. I think when we were here last, our plantings was not as lush. So what we did is we requested our landscape architect, let's maximize it. So it is truly an experience and it is more of a garden between the garage and the main doors of the hospital. Okay. Thank you. Some views of the connecting canopy between the garage and the hospital. Going. Okay. Okay. Keep going. I think we've already talked about the architecture, but these are all the elements that ties back to what we are trying to incorporate in the architecture of the building. This is the existing hospital, and like you mentioned, the town of Somerville being a past resident, it is that warmer brick tone that we've also added to our garage. Going, please. That's one of the renderings, I believe, that was shared last time between the precast architecture panels, the perforated metal panels, and then you have the lush landscaping on the right. Okay, that's a night rendering. I believe that was requested last time. Hopefully this makes everybody happy in this room. Go. This is again the view from Midland Parkway as you drive into the campus. Okay. Okay, you can keep zipping through these. These are all the different floor plans. It is an over 800 plus parking garage. That's the exterior elevation. Keep going. Okay. I think that's the survey. You can directly go to C 5.0. That is slide 38, I believe. Yeah. And that kind of shows how instead of that sea of parking, the northwest parking lot is a gravel parking lot, and that is just sized enough while the parking garage is under construction. And all of the trees along the west property line have all been left as is. And also the west parking lot that was purchased, that is going to be untouched. We are not going to do anything with it. And then you can also see the sidewalk that leads you to Midland Parkway. Okay. Going. Yes, please. Thank you. And like she mentioned, we are going through the Tree Protection Review Board as we speak. We're also going through a replatting process for that west parking lot. And then for the landscaping, we did add, because we wanted that street-lined concept that the board had requested, we added additional plantings. We've left the existing grand trees on Plan East as well, and trying to create that experience as you're driving down that road.
Question, so the parking lot on the left is gravel, it's gonna stay gravel for some period,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and it'll be, say, overflow parking in the
Yeah.
future. Okay.
Yes, sir. And then, as you can see, all of the grand trees are kept as is. And then if you zoom in along the south facade of the garage, we've also added some additional planting and trees to enhance that pedestrian access as they're walking down from the west to the east side of the campus towards the main doors of the hospital. And then also if you pan over the area between the garage and the main doors of the hospital, we've just maximized the landscaping to, create that pedestrian access again.
And can you zoom into that little park? Please.
I'm glad you're referring to it as a park.
I'm just looking to see if there's shade, if someone's walking through there.
So we have a covered canopy
Oh, that's
all the
right.
way from the
Okay.
garage to the main doors.
How about where the benches are? It looks like there's lots of shade there. On that little curve on the south of the main walkway.
Yeah, I mean, we are hoping that, with those larger size trees and plantings, that should provide some shade.
Looks like crepe myrtle right behind the benches and some canopy tree right there. So, okay. Right. Would you mind zooming back out? One suggestion I would have, zoom back so we can see the pond behind the garage. I would suggest considering landscaping the pond so it doesn't look so utilitarian when you're approaching the garage. you know, the town in the past has been amenable to, even if it's just bald cypress trees along the pond banks or on the top of the bank. That they've been amenable to that in the past. And it just turns it into a little bit more of an amenity than just kind of a utilitarian feature.
So
And that
make
would
it a little
soften the
more-
height of the building as well.
Right.
Just if you
Okay.
could consider that.
Yeah.
When this garage is complete, will you have a excess quantity of parking?
No.
No.
No, I think we will just about meet the needs. Keep in mind, the hospital has some future expansion plans, and then that'll be reevaluated how they want to address parking. So this is to break even.
Okay.
With-
Are you building this deck so that it could be expanded vertically
Um,
for the future?
for the parking garage? No, this is maxed out.
I was just hoping that if you did have access, which you don't, that some of this northern paved area
Mhm.
can be transformed into more green area to minimize the heat sink of all this asphalt in this
Mhm.
entire area.
Mhm.
But if you can't, you can't.
So you're talking about the area north of the parking garage, right? I mean, I think that's a great suggestion. So maybe if we are to expand, and I'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Any other comments on site or architecture or anything else you would like to add?
Well, I think going back to what she had mentioned, is there a way we can get conditional approval? I mean, I do agree with her. We don't want to take steps back. So if the tree review board does come back and say, hey, X, Y, and Z. So I completely understand that. But if there are no comments or few comments, can we address it at the staff level?
Well, I think so, but let's make sure what the comments are.
Okay.
Any comments?
Not really, no.
Bill, any comments?
I,
Peter?
Is
Andy?
this final or is this?
They're asking for final.
So they're asking for final. Typically, the process is that,
Except for the tree.
yes. But it would be acceptable to, if you were comfortable, grant final approval with the condition that that vested approval letter that we send will not be provided to the applicant until they receive final approval from the tree protection board.
Okay. Are there any other comments before we make a motion? Someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we grant final approval.
Can I ask clarification? Is it final approval with conditions?
With conditions,
The condition being the
items
the
that
tree
we
issue.
discussed,
Great.
Again,
items that we discussed.
okay. Are we at a second with Candy? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
So,
Thank
Good
you.
job.
so just so I'm clear, you're issuing final approval without the condition that they receive tree protection board approval.
No,
They
it
have to.
Okay, I just wasn't clear on that.
was a final approval with the condition that they go to the,
I just wanted to make sure that's what Peter was referring to.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Good job. Next is I believe the multifamily portion of the Floodairs property.
So this came before you previously for final approval. There were a few details that the board wanted to work out and see again before issuing final approval. I summarized those in the staff report, but I'm sure the applicant can advise on those for you, and staff did not have any further comments on this one.
I guess I'll start the show. Thank you all again for seeing us.
Could you introduce your team or state your role in the project as you're coming through?
Okay, Chris Ackerman, Thomas Hutton, the civil engineering, site planning.
James McDonough, McDonough Conroy Architects. Marco Scarda with the Crest Group.
and property owner.
All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah, so in regards to the site plan, if we could go to the colored site plan, please. A lot of the concerns were around the open space and amenitizing the open space that we had. So again, we coordinated with the postmaster, and it was agreed upon that there are going to be a single mail kiosk up at the amenity. It will be covered and lit. The amenity area, we added the back deck, additional, I guess, patio space area with walks to the green space. Each of these, by the way, has a kind of a blow up, but this is the overall. We added some more pond overlook areas. The dog park area had is two sections, small dog, large dogs. There's a seat wall along that side near that 14P building. Can we go to the next slide, please? And again, got questions regarding the site plan. I think that was the biggest comments were just, you know, utilizing the open space that we did have and making it more appealing for the residents. One of the things that also came was the signage that we discussed. And while you'll see, I think it's the next sheet, please. Yeah. So we have a, basically it's showing a brick column. You'll see it when you get to the architectural renderings of what it looks like. It's got the brick columns, and there's a water feature. The reason why we have option 1 and option 2 on there is actually to get y'all's opinion. One of the thoughts was this would be kind of like a community park area. The other thought was it would be more of just a generalized, you know, community area to gather, where you can see there's seating, and the option 1 area with some plantation mix trail that leads to the seating area. I think that was something that was kind of brought up. It was about more open space or, you know, kind of a community gathering. So let's see. And then if you could go to the next one, please. And then, of course, we have the small dog park, large dog park, and then the additional seating area that we talked about. Each of the ponds, the bottom pond there is retained, like we discussed, with an overlook. And each of the ponds actually have overlook areas as well. And again, when it gets to the, I think the landscape plans were good. We can get to the color renderings, and you can kind of get a better idea of what that entrance view. There we go.
So that shot is directly in front of the large tree in the circle that's there. So we put a partial brick wall, sort of delineate that area, keep it safe if the kids are running around. That's basically the view from Berlin G. If you keep going. So one of the things that you guys asked for was to put fountains in the water. So we've got the fountains in the water. We've got the amenity in the back of the clubhouse with the deck that's projecting down there by the water. We have a closer look of that. What we did is you recommended that I go to Magnolia Street for context, which I did after the last meeting, and I appreciate that. So if we go to the clubhouse shot from the front there, that's still the aerial that you can see the amenities, the pool and the pickleball courts. There you go. So what we did is we did a gable end detail, stood up the hip roofs on the end of the main body of the structure and put gable ends up there along with the board and batten detail and the gable end. Changed that front rail that we had to a shed roof. And these were all details that I gleaned from Magnolia Street. We keep going. There's a shot of the back area there with the deck area down by the water. People sitting around the fireplace behind the clubhouse. The shot from across the pond looking over at the clubhouse from one of the walkways. Keep going. Another shot, what we did, the Berlin G shot is a long shot. So we broke that into two pieces. This is to the other side of the main entry. So you can see the brick wall down at the one end.
Is the landscaping on this fairly accurate compared to the plan?
We gave the renderers our landscape plan, so I'm hoping that they copied it.
The only thing I would,
Go ahead.
I like what I've seen so far. The only comment I have on this is the palm trees are more of a beach thing, not a Somerville thing.
Okay.
Typically we are more supportive if, say, they're around your pool or humidity or something like that, but not part of the entrance.
Okay.
So I would think I think our preference would be no palm trees along that entry road. And then this is, I think, as good a slide as any to look at, but it looks like the fence, the brick fence over there, or brick wall columns and fence, does it return and hit the buildings in any way?
No, it doesn't enclose anything. It just delineates a space. They're 2x2 piers, 6 foot high. They've got a herringbone pattern in it. We have the drawings to show that. And in the center where the sign is, we have a little water feature coming out underneath it. But no, it doesn't return back. We can.
I would, just a suggestion, but just as a parent, my kids used to be little, is if I could put them in a place where I knew they wouldn't run out onto the street, I'd feel more comfortable with that. So if you would just consider returning those somehow to the, and it doesn't have to be brick, it could be the wrought iron or whatever, but that'd be a little safer to me, just as a
Point well taken. No problem. Next slide. Let's see what we have. The shot between the buildings that we flipped. So we had an 8 and an 8 and a 14 and a 14. So we flipped the 14 and the 8. So there's an 8 with a 14 across from it and an 8 over here with a 14. So that the light coming through would be at different angles and not just blocked, and you're not looking directly across at the other guy's unit. That's the same as the one as yours. Another shot of the same. Continue next. Is that the last one?
anything else you'd
Okay.
like to add?
No, what we did
describe-
is, just so you have an idea, we put all the condenser units, they're on the site plan, you'll see them there. We didn't show the screening around them so that you could see where they were, but we are going to screen them with landscape.
And you provided a detail for that, didn't you, on this one? Or am I thinking of a
I
different project?
think it's on the site plan.
Are there gonna be any HVAC units visible from Berlin Myers?
Not with the buffer. We're gonna landscape.
But you're
around.
screening them too, though,
We're
right?
gonna screen them, yes.
It's a permanent. What is the screening? You said,
The screening, we'd like to use landscape. Do you want a physical barrier?
I would, yeah.
Like a vinyl fence, guys?
Yes, sir.
Just in front of each here.
Yeah, just in front of
Just in front of
Be able to see it from
And-
Berlin G.
From Berlin Myers, internal to the site.
Right.
Permanent physical barrier, not as much, but along Berlin Myers, a low wall, a fence, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little 4 foot high fence.
Yeah.
We figured, from the last, times we came here that you guys wanted more green space, so we shied away from more iron fencing, but you guys would try that.
Well, I think it would be some.
Something opaque.
Something opaque.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could put landscaping in front of it, but we want that, we don't want to be able to see, like, say the plants died or whatever. We don't want to see those AC units.
Gotcha.
And can you review the electrical meter locations too? So just somewhat conceal them.
Yeah.
Not to do anything elaborate. I don't need a fence or anything like that, but you know, instead of seeing a bank of 30 meters on one wall in one section, if you could visually be sensitive to that too.
We broke up with the locations where, but yes, understand, conceal the electrical meters.
Can we go back to the amenity building, Becca? Yes. Or the elevation. Front, yep. So I know we discussed, well. Okay, I think this looks good.
I just want to thank you guys because you've taken every single thing that we've said just about, and you haven't fussed about it, and you took it and you came back with something that, you know, yeah. So thank
Well,
you.
we appreciate the feedback and we're looking to integrate into Somerville. So, thank you for the help.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
What is the material under the porch? Is that white brick wall? Or is that more the lap siding?
It's actually lap siding,
And is that vinyl or is it hardy plank or?
tardy plank.
There's no vinyl, it's all hard.
It's all hardy plank, no vinyl.
I'm just gonna put this out there, the bench on the next pickleball court is green. What you guys said about, hey, we will certainly not make.
Did you take the yellow off? I think I think.
Holy hole's gone.
Is it Charleston green? Cause that's okay. Yes.
So we're officially here hoping to obtain final approval on the architecture. And the site plan. And the site plan. And the site plan.
Tell me about I don't recall, I'm sorry, but the dumpster enclosure, compactor. Can we just make sure we put our eyes on that?
Yeah, there is a compactor located on where the sidewalk that went to nowhere. So if you look top left there. There you go. That's fine too. Yep. Zoom in right there. That top left area. So now that's where the trash compactor is located.
Okay.
They have another little dumpster location down there by the cul-de-sac, by the pump station.
And what are the materials on that?
As far as the enclosure is concerned,
Yes, sir. Masonry wall. Is it-
yeah, I would say we'd do a red brick masonry enclosure with gates.
Have you shown us, or is there any drawing on the street lighting?
Yes, that was on the previous. The middle. I did not include it. We were.
Do you know what kind of,
last
can
meeting-
you describe the fixture? Is it just,
Yeah, it's the, oh man. That's that. It was the,
is it on a rendering?
How tall is the pool? 20 foot, 30 foot?
20-foot poles on some kind of, it's like a traditional something
From Dominion
from.
Energy. Is it a shoebox or is it like a acorn?
It's on the tree. It's on the lighting. That's very end of the original. These files, as you can imagine, that.
So you've illuminated the site throughout. How about some of these between the buildings?
Yeah, there's foot lighting, as well as an overall, illumination.
So you have along these pathways some kind of,
Foot lighting.
nice, very nice.
Um,
This is not the.
What about your, what about your, okay, the sign was around that 49-inch live oak or 43-inch live oak. There was a sign on the front of that fence, I think.
So and it was on the rendering.
Yeah.
Zoom in, you can see it.
So, Becca, is that something that's approved now or it's approved at staff later or?
Typically, I mean, it can go either way. If there were specifics about the sign that you wanted to see, condition them with your approval. In general, what I'm looking at, is if it meets the, height requirement, and overall square footage, which I believe for, residential subdivisions, the maximum height is 6 feet. And then the square footage, I believe is 20 feet, but you could condition your approval to allow them to vary from that size to staff discretion.
The pier, yeah, the pier's a 10 foot on center for reference.
Right. So that.
Not in height from
From
each other.
From each other,
Six
so yeah,
feet tall.
6 feet tall.
That'd be much bigger than.
Yeah, the piers is 6 feet tall max. The top of the fence is 5 feet tall. And they're 10 foot on center. And so that sign is approximately 10 feet long. And it's well set back from Berlin G.
Yes.
One last question. You show window boxes underneath some of these windows.
Yeah.
Are you intending to do those or is this just for rendering purposes?
No, on Berlin G, we intend on doing those. Those are specific for the, trying to beautify that elevation.
Very nice again.
Anything else you would like to add?
At this point.
All right, they're asking for preliminary, final approval. Were y'all asking for conditions on, the tree removals and all that stuff? Okay, so they're asking for final approval. I do have some notes. I'll just read them back to you. Conceal electrical panels, permanent HVAC screen along Berlin Myers or visible from Berlin Myers. Should say, consider a wall return of the fence, just kind of to corral the kids a little bit. And the trash compactor will be masonry in a brown or a red or, yeah, enclosure. Yep. Would someone like to make a motion?
I've got one thing to add.
Sure.
At the beginning of our presentation in the front here, we had a paper section, option 1, option 2 is with more green space. Is say again? Okay. If you guys had a preference, we would be amenable to that.
Well, let's look at it real quick.
Have we got a preference? I don't.
My preference would be option 1. But just because you have a throw area above it. But that would just be a preference.
Okay. And just to confirm that what we have as far as the sidewalk connections to the plantation mix within the canopy is okay?
Yes. If you have a steel edge, kind of can hurt the roots, but
okay.
I think it's either way is probably fine. All right, does anyone else have preference on the option 1 or 2?
Option 1's good.
Okay. All right, so, would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion, final approval. Based on comments.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Y'all did great.
Looking forward to working further. Appreciate it so much.
Take care.
We only got one more?
I was about to say, are we considering the commercial component as, okay.
Yes, we accept the the engineer for that, I believe, is on Zoom.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're here.
Yeah.
So we'll move into the preliminary review request for the commercial component of this site. Again, I summarized the comments from the conceptual meeting. The applicant will need to clarify the stone foundation finish material. It wasn't really clear to me if it was stacked stone, what the material actually was. And I referenced just the wall material section of our design guidelines there. A care plan will need to be provided for the 70-inch live oak that is impacted by the commercial component of the site. And screening for the dumpster utilized by the daycare will need to be provided along with a detail. And it will need to be included in the building plan set if the board is comfortable with staff reviewing it. So go ahead and jump there. Do we have our folks participating via Zoom?
Yes, I'm here.
Go right on ahead and just let me know if you need me to jump around on the slides.
Sure. Thanks again. My name is Don Ferry. I'm an architect with Health Design Architects out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We've actually done a couple of facilities for the learning experience in South Carolina, but none in Somerville. We've taken some examples from the Mount Pleasant location, which was done previously, to give a little bit more of that, what's considered low country. So we've, and the color scheme also complies or is looking to mimic what is going on with the multifamily right next door. So it's that grayer tones. So in the previous application, so what we've done here is we still have portions of the material. This time, what we're looking at is we've covered the doors and windows immediately with some board and batten sides, and then you've got metal awnings. So this is a standing seam roof. And then the step down portion goes to a horizontal type siding material, which would most likely be hardy, with that of Bermuda shutters covering those features. We changed the colors of this sign, so it's all a blue lettering, except for bubbles, which is the logo. And then it's educational for early, or Academy for Early Education there on the front canopy. We've taken also out the ABC 123, which is somewhat of a signature of the learning experience, but trying to fit a little bit more with the characteristics of Somerville. The stone material at the base, which you're looking at, is actually a real stone veneer. So it's actually a physical hardy material. We are using that currently in our Fort Mill location. So we'll actually have samples of that during our next meeting, so you can actually see what that is. But that actually goes in as a veneer. It's a 4-inch thick material, so it's actually hung onto the wall itself with a concrete cap to it. The center portion here in the gray is actually part of an EFA system, which is what the main building was before. I think, and you can see we're trying to cover a lot of the entrances. In the back playground area, the playground areas have 2 sections based on ages of the children playing in them. There's a requirement certainly to provide shade for those, so you've got those rear canopy areas. In this case, we've actually stayed with the color scheme to provide those to be in that grayer tone versus that of, I believe their current thought is, I don't know if it's currently blue, canary yellow, orange. They keep on changing that one on me. But this way we're kind of, and the back is a little bit of plain on the siding here. Again, most of that, the fencing around the play yard is going to be 6 foot tall, so that we are actually, it's an opaque fence to the playground and what's going on in there as a kind of a barrier protection for them. Once we get past the playground area, we can step that down to a 4 foot high fence along that. Currently, right now, the fencing is PVC, but that's certainly up for discussion. We have other examples in the following pages of similar type of fencing looks that have been done elsewhere to try and see if there's something along there that is more amenable. Again, we typically go with a PVC because of the low to no maintenance components of them. And I believe Daniel's also on from the development group.
That's correct. If you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I've also slightly lost my voice, so if it's hard to hear me, I apologize. The only thing I wanted to mention about the fencing too was in talking to the daycare operator, they wanted something that wasn't solid. I guess, you know, in terms of kids knocking into the fence, something that have a little bit of give to it is also better for them. But we figured with the different coloring of the different PVC or fencing options that Don put up, that it was a little bit more acceptable.
And we also need to review the site plan, right? We have purview over that.
Yeah, that's on, yep, the page, perfect.
Who is the engineer present for the site plan?
Yep. Chris should still be there.
Yep, still here. So the questions from the changes that were made from, I guess, the first conceptual was concern about the children's playgrounds. The entire building was shifted north. The playground was then shifted to the back towards the Limehouse Village side. The parking area was then rotated around, and we shifted the building also further away from the 70-inch live oak. And then they've got the updated ADA, just moved the location and just kind of gave some little green areas for, you know, pedestrian circulation.
Will there be a sidewalk connection from the daycare to the street, or is it kind of following internal like you've shown?
Yeah, it's basically the connection goes west up towards the main entrance, and then there's a crosswalk that cuts through, and then it also continues on to Berlin G. Myers.
Right. Thank you. Any concerns? Like, is this conceptual again?
No, it's preliminary.
You have a landscape plan? Okay.
I think it was incorporated. Chris, was it part of the landscape plan that you submitted on the broader site?
Yes, sir.
Are there dumpsters?
So, and I know it's hard to see with the two different, you see where the parking lot is to the.
It says dumpster pad down
Yeah,
there.
right.
Okay. I
Sorry.
didn't see that at first. Right.
So.
But it's got an enclosure and.
Oh, there was on that side. Well, yeah, everything except for anything around the building. That's right. I apologize. We did. It just wasn't included in this submittal set. I apologize for theirs. It was for the overall site.
So
Then
this
you have the
community
Oh, sorry.
center, it's an amenity for your residents, right?
Yes.
But I don't see any kind of connectivity. If I lived in here, walking my child to this facility, I don't see any connection. You may want to just address that.
They'd have to walk down the street.
Yeah.
Which is.
Better they'd have to walk through the overall amenity.
Or they, yeah, but I mean, if you live plan left, you're having to walk down the street, you could continue that sidewalk that's shown to the left of the 44-inch live oak and kind of loop that up or something. You know, trying to stay away from the trees in a reasonable fashion.
I mean,
at least connect, or maybe there's one to the south or something.
it's almost designed that it's freestanding. It should have a separate vehicular entrance off of Berlin Myers, but I don't think that's what you want. So obviously, so I think you need to give some kind of connectivity to the community.
I think from a.
Go ahead.
I think from the 70-inch live oak, is this the one that's kind of half of it?
Yeah, it's like lopsided.
Chop the half of it off.
And it looks like it was just kind of, there's a hedge on the left, which I like, there's a hedge on the right along the street. It'd be better if that were, give it some thought to be almost like a waiting area, almost like, I know you don't want a playground near the road, but enhance that as an amenity or something better to look at as the parents are waiting to pick up their kids if they're walking. I think you should consider that. Just make it more of kind of this little park, and I'd have to see the tree again, but just if you could, as the daycare center moves forward, think of that as that common space in front of the daycare center. All right, any other questions we have related to the site?
Not with site, I have building comments.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to building comments, and just for the applicants on the phone, we're gonna direct questions towards you all, particularly the architect. And so we'll go through this kind of question and answer period. Then we're going to close the discussion and talk about it internally. And I'm going to ask you not to speak during that time, just so we can kind of efficiently run the meeting. And then we'll open it back up to you all. All right, Bill, you had some architectural comments?
I've got a couple. Number one, excuse me, microphone. Okay, number one, the canopies are behind the shutters over the windows. You've got slats. That's okay, but I would put solid panels just like you've done on some of the others, and definitely have solid panels to protect the door entrances on every door. Because right now you have slats over most of the doors other than the main entrance. There should be solid panels so that you can get protection from the rain. We have a lot of rain, or we're used to.
Are the Bermuda shutters rendered correctly? Usually the hinge part is at the top of the window. You're kind of using it as an awning. Is that what you intend to do, or are these Bermuda shutters? Mr. Art?
They're not gonna be operable.
They will not be operable, so they will be more of an awning. And I think
would
your
be-
point's well taken to be solid.
It would be a good idea to make them operable though, because we do have hurricanes.
Yes, you do.
So it's a, you know, the big ones on the front elevation, no, but on the sides of the front elevation, the small ones or the doors. Then the doors need to be panel doors versus flush. It should be panel doors to look better. And the brick or the water table, rather than being a faux stone or whatever it is, should be brick. Just use a red brick for the water table.
I would back up a little bit and ask you first, how does this building relate to the Low Country and to Somerville, through the massing, through the materials? How does it relate to the adjacent apartments? And have you studied the Low Country? Have you studied Somerville to try to bring those elements through? Because I'm not seeing it, but I may be missing something. So I'd like to hear how it looks appropriate to the Low Country.
And to piggyback on that, again, it does look better than the first. Y'all, you did listen, and so it does look a whole lot better. My thing is, you've done this beautiful design on these apartments and you've done all these changes. I'd like to see this look more like that area. Does that make sense? Because it is a part of that. So I'd like to see that be a little more congruent.
And I think,
guess.
quite honestly, to be candid, the architect was present. He went over to Magnolia Street, looked at it, said, I got it.
And
Architect is not present. And I think there's a disconnect between what this area looks like and what I'm seeing on the screen.
Understood. So you'd like to see a lot of the elements from the multifamily portion carries.
so it just kind of looks like it's a part of it, and yeah.
It could look like a little kind of a village.
Yeah. You're trying to build a
Building.
community, and this will be a big part of that community, you're hoping. And so I think that would go a long way to have it. It doesn't have to look exactly like it, but have, you know,
It kind of looks like just a kind of a prefab metal building, and I've seen other daycare, I'm probably using the term incorrectly, but other learning centers or daycare centers, that has a, sloped roof. There's one next to I can think of. I think I've seen a couple others that really look like it is kind of this low country building. To me, this does not look appropriate for this area.
So you'd like to see pitched roofs on the top of the building?
Something to consider.
You could do a longitudinal gable roof with about a 6-foot overhang. And that would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, I would agree. That would make the building look a little bit less industrial. It does look.
Right.
Yeah.
a little boxy.
And to Bill's
And
point,
considering
those,
the length of the building, you probably need some dormers on the gable roof.
those overhangs, that's typical of the low country, a bigger overhang than you would see in other areas.
So.
Yeah, Candy's point, we get a lot of rain and sun here, and it's just, and the use of materials, the Bill said it, but the stone is just not that's just not a low country material.
So you would prefer brick similar to what we had on the front of the property where the sign is?
Yeah.
Right, same color. We'll carry
And it
that.
may be instead of just a water table, you may have a sloped roof and that entire front or the entire building is brick. I don't think any of us would be opposed to that. And there's been some buildings that have been quite successful that were built recently, and some a few years ago that are of similar size that maybe could be an inspiration for this building.
Okay.
Also, the use of ephes and a vinyl fence is not the quality level of your residential area. It would stick out like a sore thumb.
So you're saying you'd rather see an iron fence?
No.
No,
Wood.
the vinyl fence,
Yes.
it could be wood.
Yeah, so.
Just the use of vinyl fence. Vinyl fence, I understand the maintenance of it or lack of, but it looks.
I also thought that they said something about the children, but it like the
So
kids.
we
playing.
met with TLE last week with the owners and talking about this project. They're super excited about it. They have hundreds of locations across the country. And what they said about the fencing was if you use the vinyl fence and we attach some other options as opposed to just the white, that I think would work better. But if we use the vinyl fence, if a kid falls and hits it, it has some relief as opposed to a wood or a metal fence.
Sphinx is using a white vinyl fence on their Highway 78 site. You can't tell it's not wood unless you go up and touch it. But from
Yeah,
5 feet away, it looks
some of
like
the options we had textured vinyl, color textured vinyl
it looks good.
that gave more of a wood feel.
Their fence looks like wood.
Okay.
I think
I would agree. White vinyl is very blah.
and some of the other applicants, whether it's today or in the past, they've kind of put this almost a photo montage together, a lookbook that says, this was our inspiration to do this. And look, we saw this in this part of town. We saw this over here. We wanted to pick up on that. We saw this. So that's where we got the brick from. So I think there needs to just be a little bit more robust study of what makes Somerville unique. We all know, and we want you to come here. We do, and this will be a great use for this site. But it needs to look like it belongs here and is, using traditional low country materials it can be done in a new way, but it looks like it really needs to look like it belongs. But it's going to take studying the area to do that.
Of course, I would agree.
And y'all did a great job with the apartment, so
Yes.
we know you can do it.
Thank you.
And I think we mentioned this in the previous meeting, but just the Berlin G. Myers frontage, that elevation is, I think, lacking. You guys, I think, have a lot of revisions to make, it sounds like, from the rest of the board's input. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that. You knocked it out of the park, I thought, with the residential portion frontage and the brick columns with the fencing. You've got the live oak and the amenity center in the background. It's just like, you don't want to be driving down, see that, and then this stick out in a negative manner.
And back to, could we go to the elevation that would be seen from the street? Because this is the parking lot side. Just keep that in mind. Probably north, yeah. That's, or maybe even, is there one that kind of shows that right-hand side as well? The northwest? Is there a northwest one? Yeah, that's it. So that's the side that's going to be seen from Berlin Myers. So that all sides of this building are important. Yep.
Okay, so let's go through a few elements. So I know exactly where we are. So the next time we could make sure we address them. So for the Bermuda shutters, we're going to make them solid, possibly operable. The stone, we're going to switch to brick. We're going to see if we could adhere some pitched roofs on the top of the building. We'll try and get the renderings to reflect the landscaping plan, because this is obviously not, it's very bare, as well as the enhanced final fencing. And there was one comment that I didn't quite follow about the sidewalk. I believe you made it for the interior of the property.
That just envision a parent and a child who lives in one of your apartments also use this facility, whether it's going to or coming back, and they want to walk there. What is that experience? Right now, they're walking down the middle of your street, which I don't think is the experience you want for liability reasons.
Yeah.
Now, just out of curiosity, how would that work if we were to maybe restructure some of the sidewalks to make the site more coherent, even though we just got approved for this prior? Would that just be an amendment to?
I think that's what it's going to require. I think you may want to look at a stop sign too. I don't know if you have any internal stop signs on your roadway.
Yeah, we do. I don't think it's reflected on this rendering. But
I think
for sure.
Specifically to answer your question a little bit is the site plan for the daycare was not approved.
Right.
So I think that will have to be studied, and they'll have connections that kind of go off of the scope of this project, but I think that's a pretty easy fix that could likely be done at a staff level.
Awesome. Yeah.
So if you look at this plan right here, this 14P building, I think it may need to be shifted up so that this sidewalk that you have coming from this direction, which is the west, I guess. Oh, no, this is north, the east, could be extended to engage the community center.
Well, they've got, that sidewalk does get to this communities.
Well,
How?
I think what we're saying is it has to be studied, whether that's the way or a different way. I mean, it could come through the dog run. There's ways to get there. It just has to be studied.
Pretty well got it there now. Sidewalk.
Yeah, you got the crosswalk across the main entrance drag, but that's the only marked crosswalk. that
Yeah,
we
I'm
saw.
thinking, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking maybe if we put a sidewalk on the backside of that dog park, which would be continuous from where you see it carries through the pond, and then we could put a crosswalk there with a stop sign and maybe some brick. a
Agreed,
brick
yeah.
Walking way there.
Yeah.
I think you want to get people away from that 90-degree turn as much as you can. The sight lines are going to be terrible there. And we can't tell you to not do that, but I think the further away you can direct pedestrian traffic from that 90-degree turn, the safer it's going to be.
Okay.
Any further discussion on building site, anything? Candy? Peter?
Does the designers and architect understand that, what we said? Since you're on Zoom, we don't have a connection with you.
Yeah, that's right. If you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make, you're more than welcome to make them now.
Well, thanks. Well, I certainly appreciate the comments and insight. We were trying to be a little bit different than the residential since it is a large kind of commercial building. So, and we also emulated some of the parapet structures you have now. All the HVAC equipment's on the roof. So it was higher parapets to kind of conceal all that. So it was intended to look a little more commercial than it was residential. We could certainly enhance that, but those were some of the images that we followed, and we can certainly provide a image page as to how we, derived and looked at what we came up with. We can certainly provide more to that. Maybe we're still too deviated from the residential part. Okay, well, let's do that. We may look at just portions of the building having that gable end instead of the whole structure itself. I mean, you've got 10,000 square feet of a building there. I certainly, one of the previous designs of the Learning Center actually had hipped roofs, if you will, all the way around the building, and then a kind of what I almost called a pool in the center where all the equipment was, which hid the equipment, but it made access and dealing with them a little more challenging. And it's also a costly operation. So they kind of did away with that to come up with something a little more cost effective in this. But I certainly agree with some of the comments there that we can make it have a little more characteristics of the surrounding.
Thank you for that. I think it's going to be very important for you to study the Low Country and study Somerville. I think it's worth the trip.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other comments? So they're asking, if not, they're asking for preliminary approval. Would someone like to make a motion?
Make motion, we deny preliminary approval. And then, with comments made, which would mean you could come in for approval next time.
And just to clarify, so the applicant understands when y'all come back, it would have to be submitted as preliminary. But if changes are made and the board feels that final is appropriate, they have the ability to grant final at that time.
Seems fair.
All right. Is there a second?
I second.
And again, the motion is for denial of preliminary approval. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank
See
you,
ya.
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, so we will move on to our next item, which is Sawmill Crossing, new construction of a multifamily building. You may have noticed in my staff report, similar to the Somerville Medical Parking Garage building, the applicant is requesting final. However, the typical process is that the project would go before the Tree Protection Board prior to receiving final vested DRB approval. So staff would recommend, again, if DRB feels granting final approval is appropriate at this time, that they condition the approval with the prerequisite that if the Tree Protection Board finds that specific grand trees are to be maintained rather than removed or encroached upon, that the applicant cannot receive vested DRB approval until the Tree Protection Board has granted final approval for the project. At the last meeting,
Becca,
yes.
hate to interrupt. Need to make the nature break for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I was just in my little own world over here. We'll break for 5 minutes if that's okay with everyone, then come back.
Ask her.
Good. I should have.
If everyone's ready, we can go ahead and get started. I think I went over the important part of my staff report. I'll let the applicant advise as to their responses to the previous meeting comments. And we can go ahead and get started, and please just let me know what slide to jump to during your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I'd first like to introduce myself and introduce the team, if that's okay with the chairman of this board. My name is Denny Blackburn. I am Senior Vice President with Woda Cooper Companies, and I'm based in Savannah, Georgia. I'm here today with our architect, David Maurer, with Tightline Designs out of Raleigh. We have our civil engineer, Jeff Ackerman, with Coastal Engineering from Beaufort, and our landscape architect, Josh Tiller, who's from Bluffton. And I'm also here with my colleague, Ali Umstutz, who's from our head office in Columbus, Columbus, Ohio. And Ali, I think, has been your main contact with Becca throughout this process. So I'd like to let the architect and the design team get into the actual to discuss what's the building and the site plan, etc. But I would like to first give you an overview, because I think at the last meeting you wanted to know a little bit more about the whole concept of affordable housing and SC Housing's role, and why this particular development at this location. The history of the tax credits, affordable housing tax credits, was decided in the mid-1980s when Ronald Reagan was around, that there was a huge need for affordable housing in the country, everywhere. And they created these housing tax credits. And each state is allocated a certain amount of housing tax credits determined on the size of the state. And these credits are managed by SC Housing. And SC Housing then operates a competitive application process, and developers from South Carolina and outside of South Carolina come and put in competitive applications to be allocated these tax credits. Woda Cooper has been around for 35 years. We have done about 400 different developments in 18 different states. And as a totally vertically integrated company, we manage our properties. So we have about 16,000 different units under management. When we come into a community, it's very important for us to stay in the community, to understand the community, and continue to develop different properties within that community. We have developed about over a dozen different properties in South Carolina, including one here in Somerville called Oak Hollow. So why this particular site? Well, we go, as it's a competitive application process, we go around and look for sites that will score well as per South Carolina's scoring criteria. And we came across this site. We developed a plan. We put in the actual application. It scored very well, and we were very fortunate to be selected by SC Housing to receive these credits. We're fighting to get these credits throughout the whole of the state. So we're very pleased to be able to be allocated these credits. They actually give out about 15 to 20 different developments each year. So this site has 42 units. It's on the smaller side of what we usually do as a development, but this site is very, it's, as I said, scores really well for an urban type of development. And it is, this is why we're doing a 4-story development on this particular site. So our intent today is to answer the questions, bring you the information that you did not have last time, and to hopefully be able to get to a time frame that we can move forward. I did want to mention SC Housing has their own rules and regulations of what they expect for a development. Our team is very experienced in doing this type of development, and what we're putting forward meets SC Housing's requirements. There's one additional requirement that is for these credits that were allocated in 2024. We need to have the certificates of occupancy in place by the end of next year, December 31st, 2026. That's why we're here today and asking if this could be a preliminary as well as a final consideration. I'd like to turn over to my colleagues, Josh Tiller and David Maurer, unless you have any questions at this stage.
No, thank you for the explanation. I'm familiar with the credits. We absolutely need workforce housing.
Right.
I think we're all excited to help you get here. Our role is to make sure this looks like it belongs in Somerville architecturally.
Right.
And I just want to say, I think we have not heard your story adequately on the previous submissions. That's at the base of what our concern has been with this project is architecturally. You probably heard me on other applicants. How does it blend in? What are the materials used? All of the things that kind of define the low country. That's what we're going to be looking for. No one is against the project. It's just we want it to look like it belongs somewhere.
Right. No, absolutely fair enough. And I think every DRB acts in a different way throughout. And we apologize if we didn't have all those questions or answers to those questions at that time. But we're here today to fix it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening. I'm Josh Tiller with J.K. Tiller Associates. We're the landscape architects. And what I want to do, I think for now, is kind of walk you through where we've come since the last meeting. We've listened to some of the staff comments. We've listened to your comments at the last meeting. And I'm just going to kind of walk through what we did from a landscape architectural standpoint on the site and some of the tweaks we've made to the site plan. Can we go down to that color site plan? And I'll start at Highway 78, Fifth Street. One thing we did discover, and we got confirmation from the county and SCDOT that we were able to get their plans for that future widening. So we've kind of planned this to accommodate that future widening. As part of that, we discovered and got confirmation that they will be burying those power lines that run parallel to Fifth Street. So at the front of the building, we were able to replace those understory. I think there were fringe trees when we last presented this plan. So we've replaced those with some willow oaks, which will grow up tall and provide shade there and help bring down the scale of that building from the kind of urban streetscape there. As we wrap around the Cedar Street side, they do widen that road as well. If you look at that, there's a very faint kind of red dash line that runs kind of parallel to the sidewalk. That's the edge of pavement there. We do have, there's a buried gas line along that edge there. We'd like to get some overstory trees along that edge, but instead we came in with palm trees that have a tight root ball that aren't going to impact that gas line along that facade. If you go back into the fenced playground, dog park area, I know there was a comment last month about the the chain link fence. What we've done is replace that with there's a hog wire and timber. It's a black vinyl coated hog wire and timber fence. I think there's some images on our detail sheet that show what that looks like. But we're going to replace that fence there with that hog wire fence. And then as you go further back on the site along North Cedar Street, around that bio basin, we're going to put in the same fence, but it's going to be much taller around that bio basin, which will allow for it to become a living fence, but it'll also help to extend that urban edge along that sidewalk there. Another comment we got from staff in the parking lot, those interior parking islands, the previous plan didn't match the minimum square footage of those. We've increased that square footage, and those proposed canopy trees within that parking lot will mature to provide shade for all those parking spaces in the back. And I believe we also added the loading and unloading parking spaces, and improve that access to the building there as well. That being said, if you've got any questions from a landscape standpoint, I'd be happy to help. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to David Maurer to talk about where we've come architecturally.
I think you can only have like, was it 8 or 12 parking spots before you have an island?
So there has to be a canopy tree within 60 feet of any parking space.
Okay, 60 feet.
Yeah, which I believe in this proposed plan, more than
We
covered
got
that.
2 rows of parking that look like you probably have to add an island somewhere in each row, left and right.
I can clarify that, but I'm not sure I'm following
It is 61 feet.
oh, you measured it?
No, that's what
Okay,
no, these parking spots are 9 feet wide.
I got you.
Multiply that one. So we'd have to add a couple islands.
You know, the outer edges.
So sorry, my microphone is dying. Yes, it can go across the drive aisle.
We might make it if they can do that.
Yeah, they changed the ordinance with the UDO
Yeah.
where it doesn't have to be every 12. It has to be within 60 feet. So the ones
Yeah, I'll
across
probably meet that.
make out.
Forget what I said.
Yeah, we had those islands that you're talking about previously, but we pulled those out, and in order to keep our parking counts, we doubled up the amount of peninsulas in that middle island. But what this plan doesn't show is those perimeter trees and their canopy, but we're only showing falls within that parking lot, and it does cover all spaces.
That's actually what those faint circles probably are that are shown over
Yeah,
there.
we kind of cranked up the opacity on it, but there's a faint dash line in there, and it's shaded a little darker in that area.
Good. I'm David Maurer, the architect with Tightlines Designs. What I wanted to do today, and I understand all of the history of what's going on, but like take us back a step and just see so that you understand how far we actually have come. I didn't realize until today as I was driving here that I couldn't bring a disk drive, so I just want to show you. This is the elevation that was presented south of the house. You can feel like that. So we did come back to you guys with a preliminary conceptual review, changed the brick, changed the patterning, changed the balcony area, added additional brick. We originally, if you recall, had panels on the upper story. You guys came back and said, yeah, we want a little bit more low country details. We added those awnings, some brackets. We changed those panel systems now to a board and batten, more low country coastal feel. We added the little awnings over the over the windows in that location. What I think the other thing that let me stop and just show you since you're coming up. I've heard all the conversations about brick today. This is not a white brick. It's actually the brick that's used on your sign, your entry sign. So if that's too white, we have an option. I mean, it's a softer.
When you say sign, this is the sign at the end of the park right here?
That's the Somerville. The downtown.
Yeah, right. It's right across the way there. Okay.
So I think it's actually having seen now. But it is now I did go by, and this is another common brick that's used in Somerville. Again, trying to match some of the materials. We're totally fine switching if that's the preference here. South Carolina housing requires a 30% brick coverage. We understand Somerville. You want this step back here?
Yeah. So that Mike can pick you up.
Yep, sorry. We understand, Somerville is predominantly a brick town. So we went from 30% brick up to 50%. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do a 4-story building all in brick. I think it's just too massive and too heavy. So that's why we were going with lighter brick. I think this visual texture could also help soften that. I did bring, and I'm going to step up here. These are the samples. That is the lighter gray that you see in there. Darker blue is just the entry feature. And then that is the predominant, the upper board and batten top. One of the things that we realized because after the last one, we had a call with Becca and the town administrator, everybody kind of to talk about what's going on here. One of the things is I think that was commented to us is as an architect, I want to put together renderings that show the building. But the reality is working with Josh, we had a lot more lush landscaping than we had rendered. So the new current renderings, like we had crepe myrtles on the front along Fifth, and we've changed those to, now that the power lines can go under, we've chose those to oaks. We've also added a significant amount of softening at the base of the building with all the landscaping around as well as around the rear area. So we updated the renderings to show that. The last thing I want to show you is, and I think this, can we do this? Static pictures never tell the full picture. And so what we've created, and I can do this a couple of times. Literally drive
on 78, or is that?
Yeah. So then we're turning the corner.
Yeah. And then that cedar.
And then we turned on the cedar. Yeah, so we're driving down. This is for the eye level pedestrian view. And then we included all the way down to Josh's fire retention and all the landscaping we put in there. And these are actually, we pulled all of the actual plants that Josh has specified. You could see it. Okay, I'll send it. But I'll be glad to show that to you again if you want. But it was really helpful when we showed it to the team that it helped that perspective of going around the building helped soften all the materials. We tried to keep it as light as possible because we do recognize that it's a massive building, but using materials, we've stepped the building in and out, so it's not, a big blank facade. With that, Unless Denny or Josh have anything else to add, we can open it up for questions. I mean, you've seen the renderings. I'll be glad to talk
be
about
better.
it and just go through
Yeah,
them.
let's just kind of go
I
through
think we
those.
can have a discussion now, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry.
We can start discussing.
Sure.
So this is the third time we've seen this, almost the exact same site plan, building plan. And when we saw it during the conceptual presentation, and it was a conceptual presentation where, just for your benefit, when it was brought to our attention, we give out ideas. And, you know, their suggestions as to how a development can fit into the city of Somerville from our perspective. And so, you know, one of the things that I talked about during that is your parking lot. You know, your site goes from to Fifth Street. And to me, that is a big site, and all that frontage along Cedar, I look at as a totality. Not that you have a building and then the rest is parking lot. You know, part of the UDO, part of the comprehensive plan that Somerville developed and spent money on and hired experts is urban design. Part of urban design is how do we connect all the neighborhoods together? How do we make it more pedestrian friendly? How do we, you know, make this area, especially the area you're in, special for Somerville? And to put a parking lot on half the site, essentially blanking out Sixth Street and half of Cedar on your site, and just devote that to a parking lot. And when I made the comment, I expected some comeback. I'm not unrealistic knowing that you do need a parking, you do need something, but it was never addressed. So as far as and even today, even in your rendering, even what I see today, half your site is not addressed. It's just shown as parking lot. I don't think it was the intention of Somerville to have a parking lot in such a, important corner. Not as equally important to Fifth, but it could be for the future. You know, the project you're going to be built is going to be there forever. And so that means we're going to forever have to have a parking lot on that critical corner for the future. So those landowners along Sixth or Cedar or the neighborhood in that area, I don't know if a parking lot is an enhancement to their neighborhood. So I wished that, someone would have come back with some design. And, a simple fence is not a design. We've had these conversations with previous applicants and they built pocket parks, and I'm not suggesting anything, but they understood the importance of the pedestrian experience throughout the blocks of Somerville. And how do we make it more livable, walkable, so that everyone feels safe? Walking, 400 feet along a parking lot, I don't know if that is the quality of life that people who live in that area are looking for. So that was one of my sort of observations on how this project proceeded. I can give you feedback on the architecture, but I don't think the site has been solved yet.
May I address that?
Absolutely.
So you're not facing a parking lot. There's a bioretention center between Cedar and the parking lot. We've put it in the very far corner. We designed the building to take along Fifth and Cedar to create that urban edge that your guidelines recommend. The only place left on the site was along Sixth. And we didn't feel it was appropriate to put it on Cedar, so we put it in the only place we could. If you look at the rendering, even if you can pull up the rendering, that parking lot is not along Cedar. There's a bioretention, and we've added the fence that Josh talked about, the green fence, and additional plantings that you've seen before. So we've done what we can to create a decent, pleasant pedestrian experience along that. And we've buffered the 6th Street side as much as we can. So there's just an entry. So that parking lot is as buffered as we can get. We did look at other options. When we came back last time, we're like, does the building want to go? I don't think, you tell me, I don't think that the building wants to be flipped and facing 6th Street. It wants to be here and create that urban edge at that corner and address the corner.
Did you already? It sounds like you are designing it to fit that building versus having a different building. Did you look at a longer building?
Absolutely.
Did you look at a,
Absolutely.
you know, it's, well, we don't know. We don't know
Right,
that.
none of
You
that
just-
was shared with us. So
It
it was
doesn't
like,
work. It
But we
doesn't
need
work.
to
To
know
get
that it
the
doesn't
units we
work.
need.
We needed to know it doesn't work. We haven't heard that there were any options done until just right now.
I mean, we need to understand what works, agree with you, what doesn't work. And we could have come upon the solution together. But, and that's why we have these steps, conceptual, preliminary, final. It's to have consensus along the way as a design is being developed. But when we don't get an opportunity and when our comments are not addressed, it's like, we don't know what's going on.
But
And,
did we not
and we
know-
understand,
Yeah.
again, this is the first time we're hearing what you had to say.
And that's why we had the public hearing. I mean, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we got approval on the conceptual site plan with the building anchor in the corner and the parking lot in its location.
No.
If you,
Conceptual, we do not vote at conceptual. There was no vote, and that's one thing I noticed on the bullet points. There was no vote in conceptual. Conceptual is meant to be an interaction of ideas, kind of this brainstorming where we're kind of talking through here's some of our, here's all the feedback. There was no vote. So that wasn't decided. And when you came back for a preliminary, it was as if very few of those ideas that were discussed were done.
But what I'd like to, I stood up, I'd like to add is, I think I mentioned before, is we're learning to work with the DRB in this particular town. DRBs work in a very different ways in other cities. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's like, if I came up with like 5 different things and the conclusion was 4 of these don't work, I'd be thrown out of the room, quite frankly. So we went through and we had a whole process, the whole team, we sat together, we flipped this backwards, forwards, the other way. We created a long building. And if we had the long building, then I think you'd say, that looks like, that would be a long building along Cedar. And we didn't even like it. You know, we thought, well, that's something we can't look at. This is why we really came around. We put a lot of time and effort with, with the true experts in the room. And I apologize, we should have maybe come to you with this and gone through it, one by one and met and flipped it and had that sort of offline discussion maybe with you. But I'm not sure how the DRB works in Somerville. So what we've got here is what we believe is the best use of this land for this particular development. So,
But how, can you explain then, and we can start from, the beginning. Can you explain how you feel this connects the neighborhood? That this, if I lived at 6 and Cedar, how is this an amenity that for the rest of my life, I'm going to be proud of?
I think one thing to note, especially on that along Cedar, we do in a way extend that urban edge with that fence line. It becomes more of a linear park along that edge. It's not your typical road frontage, but it does help it will screen that parking lot. You're not going to know that parking lot is there. So it's not like you're going to be walking past a big heat island of a parking lot. So it's going to be lush and landscaped, much like the remainder of the site along that urban corner at 78 and Cedar Street. And like David said, we did look at other options, and mainly what drives this is access to the site. We can't get another curb cut that close to Cedar and 78. So we're kind of limited to that back corner of the site there. Especially circulation for fire and emergency, that kind of thing. But it really, this is based on the code and the requirements of the code. This is what drove us to this site layout. And we exhausted a lot of different options on the property.
If I could, how deep is the bio basin?
Jeff? Just our civil engineer with
How
Carolina
deep is the
Engineering.
bio retention?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeff Ackerman with Carolina Engineering. The biobasin has the bottom of it is at elevation 71. It is intended to be dry. Obviously, we're counting on some detention there, not much infiltration. We had the site tested and we had 0.1 inch per hour. It's basically nothing, as I'm sure you can attest to. So, and site elevations there, I believe, are running about 73 to 74. So you're about 2 to 3 feet deep for the bio detention area.
So the parking lot is 74?
I believe so.
Ish.
I've double checked my plans, but
Yeah.
73, 74.
Okay, the bio retention's at a 71.
71 is the bottom. Yes, sir.
Okay. So theoretically, could more aquatic planting, cypress trees, whatever, be put in that bio retention pond so it really acts as a buffer?
Yeah, absolutely. If the ordinance allows it.
And how
within
is,
that basin.
thank you, and how is 6th Street addressed? Can you, because we've spent a lot of time on this corner and Cedar, but how is 6th North? What is that experience? So it looks like there's a,
Are there any slides that show that end of the property? Yeah. I think there's one that we meet the buffer requirements along that edge. There will be the main signage at that entryway. And we've also added the sidewalk on that 6th Street side along with the connection into the site. But we do our best to screen that parking lot based on the ordinance.
You only have residential on the cross the street, cross Cedar Street. And then on the far side of Cedar and 6th. And then on 6th Street, all the way to Main Street, I think it's all commercial. And it's not very good commercial. And then you got Bolton's old lawnmower place beside you on the parking lot. This ain't paradise over here.
But again, that's today. Hopefully, we're making a decision for the next generation.
This is a vast improvement over anything that's been proposed for that whole street. I mean, when we were growing up, that street was residential. It's not now. It's all turned commercial. Chris's office is there on that street, I think. In an ex-residential piece of property.
I think we have to be careful with that though, Bill. I mean, we're just saying it's a vast improvement.
It is.
I understand, but as to Peter's point, we're looking at something for the long term that we're all going to have, that our kids are going to have to drive by and look at. Okay. So nobody's saying not an improvement, perhaps on that corner, but our job is to make sure that this design fits in with Somerville. And not only that, look at who you're building this for. I'm a former teacher. So if you're doing this to be for firemen and teachers, I feel like I would deserve something, that would look aesthetically pleasing and fit in. Just because it's has that purpose doesn't mean that it has to not be what we would like for it
Well,
to
we
be.
can
for the town of
talk about
Somerville.
the site design, which I think is good. And we can talk about the building design, which I think needs improvement.
Okay.
are there any other site comments?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we don't give conceptual approval when we do the conceptual review, but I will mention that I was someone who didn't have a problem with the site And I hope that wasn't misconstrued as an approval in any way. But I realize the boundary constraints that you guys are under here. So it's very tough to shoehorn something in there. Could there be some type of minor pocket park attention paid to the corner at Cedar and Sixth? Potentially, but I mean, you're trying to fit a bunch of stuff in a very small bag here.
I take back saying we got to relocate.
Yeah.
I wasn't here and I didn't hear the words. I just thought we were authorized to move forward. I do think, so the property line, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's some really valid points about what we could do along Sixth. The street edge is, if you can zoom in on that upper, see our property line.
It's a real wide right of way.
Exactly. And so I'm not sure, and maybe you can address, like what we could do. I mean, there's a good bit of 20, I would guess what? From our parking lot to the street, probably 30 feet of landscaping and grass. We can put more plants there. We could put some benches, right away permits or whatever we need to do to enhance that experience from that neighborhood. I think there's some real opportunity there. It's just not our property.
I don't know if the termite business across the street from you, Stark, I don't think they're gonna worry too much. They're on the corner.
But things change.
Can you-
Points that
That's
have
right.
been made, this is for long term, and if there's an opportunity to do something that offers something back to the community there.
Can you go to some of the slides that are going down Cedar Street?
Let's see if I stop the video. Let me see if that.
Maybe I was just seeing the video. I thought we had one that
I don't think I've seen anything of the parking lot elevation on Cedar.
it must have been on the video there.
Yeah, let me stop.
Could you just bring the video to me and maybe Peter and I'll look at it and then slide it down?
That's it right there.
Can we do it again?
Sure. You guys.
Yeah, let me see. That's 78. So that's what you see at the corner. Oh, no. There we go. That's Cedar. That's what you see on Cedar. Okay. Back it up, I think. All right, so now we're going past the building. You're gonna see that starts the bio retention. So that corner, see how visible that corner is? That's how tall is the fence? And the 6 feet bio retention, that's hog wire, like you said, so you can see through it. Okay,
Oh, it's gonna have living, you've got.
you're gonna plant a vine on it.
Better cat.
Okay. 6 feet or 4 feet? Then I lost it.
I mean, we can make it 4 feet. It's 4 feet on the. Good.
Pull it back up and stop on the Cedar Street side towards the bio retention. Is the bio retention, while he's doing that, is the bio retention required for stormwater quality? Or is it just a kind of a feature?
No, sir, the bioretention area is needed for stormwater. It's an integral part. So, obviously, we're putting a lot on one piece of property. So in addition to the biodetention area, we also have underground stormwater detention as well. So there's chambers under that whole entire parking lot.
Jeff, the fences would be needed. Fence needed.
No, the fence isn't, but the bioretention pond is, as far as fencing goes, it's designed to drag drive within 24 hours. Or a load.
I mean,
So
one opportunity could be to remove that fence that's closest to the road and integrate that bio basin as part of that streetscape and kind of open it up, become more park-like as you walk past it. And then just keep the fence immediately along the end of those parking spaces.
exactly. Assuming, just for a second, the site plan's the site plan. Instead of closing that bio retention off, make it, that's your park space. I like the idea of dropping the fence, or maybe the fence goes away altogether. I don't know, maybe it's on the backside, keep it on the backside so you screen the parking.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of a living fence on the backside, it needs to be solid, like a pierced brick wall. But from the street view, it looks like a park.
Yeah.
And it's got bald cypress kind of popping through there, and it's on private land, but it reads as public open space, as an open park.
Yeah.
I think that would probably go a long way, and maybe you eliminate the sidewalk that's kind of going around that tree, and maybe you have to go into the site to continue. I don't know, just something to study. That kind of makes that green space even bigger. So you're not 5 feet off of the street edge or something. Just something to think about.
Yeah, and that sidewalks is really based on the future plans that SCDOT and the county have for that street. So, in the interim, we can eliminate it, but and we can work with them to maybe avoid that.
Yeah, maybe in that section, the sidewalk becomes internal instead of on the side of the street. I don't know, and then maybe, and see, one of the things we talked about a lot even starting at conceptual was, all right, if it's going to be urban, it can be urban with a wall. The building doesn't have to go the length of the block, but it can still continue that urban theme. But maybe if you bring in some brick columns or some elements or something and make that bio basin a park, maybe that gets you there. And then continue that potentially along 6th Street as well. Maybe there's brick columns at the ends, and there's a fence that interconnects them. I mean, the Flood Air's property actually did a pretty good job with that, the fencing they used. So that starts to create this sense of a park that kind of wraps the corner, and you still have the green space. So it gets that urban look, which I think the UDO was designed for. And I think that starts to get you that enhanced pedestrian experience rather than just kind of walking down the side of the street. So.
I also want to expand upon what Tammy said, have you studied different structure, not totally getting rid of, your 4-story mid-rise building, but some garden apartments, something different, a different type of affordable housing that is lower level, that is more low country, that is more a smaller scale to make a transition from the neighborhood. Again, I'm very big on the neighborhood, integrated into the neighborhood, reinforcing the charm of Somerville architecture, and there is a charm to it. And incorporating those type of units along with your more dense structure.
The project doesn't work unless we get 42 units. And so we did look at, you know, can we try to step the building and do 3 on one side and 4 going up? We'd have to go 5. I mean, we'd have to offset. It's a flat plate right now to get 42 units. We stepped it down, we'd have to go up. Garden style, we do a lot of garden style, 3-story walk-up apartments all over North Carolina and South Carolina. We would maybe get 24 on this site, and it doesn't work.
But a mixture, have you looked at a mixture?
There's no available land on this part. We'd need more land is the bottom line.
Is it the parking? That, again, is there some strategies to get a relief on perhaps parking ratio? I don't know.
think South Carolina requires 1. We could look at a variance. I'm just. As was mentioned before.
Again, these are just, these are the ideas that we would have talked at conceptual with you during the preliminary with you.
Right.
So we're just engaging in conversation right now. I'm not saying do this, do that, because we're just exploring how to make your project work in the city of Somerville, because we do want it.
Right.
You know, so, the next question I would have is, Somerville charm. So can you explain, maybe it's not on the drawing today, how you can incorporate Somerville charm throughout the whole pedestrian experience, going from 6, and I think we started talking about that potential with the park and, the sidewalk and whatever, onto your building.
Well, I really like the direction this conversation has gone about incorporating especially realizing it's only 2 to 3 feet down. I mean, it's just a depression. It's not something where kids are falling in and drowning, which is why we typically put up fences. And maybe there's that opportunity to wrap that around and it becomes sort of a sunken pocket park and wrap that corner with it as well. Along 5th, it's a little tricky because while this new plan takes into account the expansion of 5th, it's not happening anytime soon. So we don't want to do anything and spend a lot of money to the road at this point, and it's just gonna be torn up in a couple of years. Right?
But I'm talking about architecture now.
Well, let's
When you said the site.
let's finish the discussion on the site. And we actually have a bioretention basin in front of the old armory at the, which y'all may not be familiar with it. You might be, but the old armory, Rollins Edwards Armory, there's a bioretention. This one is bigger. So there's more opportunity to make that cool looking.
Yeah.
Right. But are there any other comments related to the site?
I just want to, before we move on from the bioswale, just or the bio basin, it's more of like a swale ditch. From what I was seeing on the proposed grading plan. So are we asking if it's like actually going to be usable for people to run around? Like
No,
run around
in my mind, it's not.
It's visually like it emulates a pocket park.
In my mind, Josh, it's a flat bio basin, most kind of flattish bio basin with a sweet grass or something that covers the whole thing. And there's bald cypress that, every 30 feet or whatever that kind of permeate that basin. It's less ditch and more flat.
This is gonna,
that's not what that says.
Right. That's what I'm trying to point out.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
But it also can become a demonstration garden for what a biobasin is.
Yeah.
Along that public edge.
I've seen some very unique, and again, this is going to add more cost, but I've seen unique ways to deal with smaller scale detention structures like this, where you have, segmental retaining block wall or some type of like structural enhancement to be able to get that elevation delta without needing the, 3-to-1 minimum slopes, which is what's creating this, ditch bioswale versus biobasin.
I think if you shift the focus from designing it just as a biobasin with aquatic planting and into more of a visual park space,
Yeah.
you can get there.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you have to be careful on what that edge material is, as
Right.
far as you don't want it to look industrial block or whatever. But maybe it's some detailed edge that gets you the drop like we're talking about. Maybe that flattens it out a little bit, maybe, but really design it as a park. I think that's the way forward. Is there any other discussion on the site for now?
The parking is the parking is the parking. You can't do anything less than what you got. You gotta have that parking ratio because you got 42 units. And you can meet in the zoning ordinance. So that's good too. So that's, you got a couple of reasons for your parking. You gotta have it.
All right, so we haven't really talked in detail about the building. We need to talk about the building as well. We would like to get us started more on the building.
Do you want to go to the renderings or the elevation drawings?
It
Just
doesn't
For
matter.
white, okay.
Renderings.
Got it.
I've got one. What I did is they added gable roofs to your balconies. For your tenant balconies. Instead of a shed roof, put a gable roof on those, and that creates some interest in the roof line that's not there now. And I think you can maybe make that work. And other than that, that's my comment.
Totally open to that. We pulled more of the low country, like the shed roof kind of look. If the gable is more Somerville, fine. That's not a problem. I mean, we don't have.
It just breaks up the straight lines. If you got a shed roof, it's all straight lines. If you got a gable, then you got the angles up there and you create a little more interest in the roof line.
That would not be a problem at all. We have the hip roof over the tower element.
You got that, but you can't see that. All you can see is the
Oh, I think
bracket.
you'll-
Brackets are very nice, that's good. But you don't see the slope of the roof.
Yeah, this building, and it's just so hard to show in renderings. We have 8-foot ceilings, approximately 18 inches, 20 inches of floor structure. The top of that parapet is only about 37, 38 feet tall. I was driving around today and looking at the 2-story building behind the county building is taller than this to the ridge.
Can you repeat that, please? What the height of? The height at the top of the parapet?
Since you're writing down, it was 10, 20, 30. We're at 38 to the ceiling of the 4th floor.
Interior.
30, probably 30, 37 feet to the ceiling of that. And then we're up another 4. So it's 40, maybe 42 feet to the typical parapet height.
So the white part right there, parapet, is 42 feet to the top.
That one, I'm going from memory here, but yeah, about 42 feet.
That's fine. Ish,
Yeah.
about 42 feet. Okay.
So let me get back.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's fine. And we could put over the main entry, we could do it as well as all the balconies, do a gable just to deviate. It's part of why we step the building roof lines to break up that mass anyway, and doing gables over those porches, totally fine.
What other low country charm, what other Somerville charm can you bring into this building?
Can we what? I'm sorry.
that you can bring into this building, and especially at the pedestrian level.
I have a comment I was gonna make to Josh, is on the pedestrian level, at the entry element, where that sign, just, under the sign there, we haven't seen any details on that. Looks like it's just kind of a concrete walk coming out of the building, but I would think if you made that kind of a little bit more of an urban space, maybe it's got brick pavers, I don't know, bench. I think there was a bench there, but I think that, and you're welcome to tell us what's there, but I think that is an opportunity to make it connect. Maybe you've done it.
There are some benches, I think this illustration shows it. But if you're talking about maybe like an enclosed courtyard in front of that plaza.
Yeah, it's certainly a wider sidewalk being the main entrance. Yeah, we could do a little brick seat walls and create a more inviting entrance.
Is that kind of some of the charm you're thinking of?
No.
Okay.
I think, your windows are not Charleston, Low Country. Usually it's divided panes. Usually the trims are heavier. This looks like an industrial double hung. Usually there's more detail on the post of the balconies. Usually more breaking up of this brick facade as far as depth is concerned. But
Yeah.
now it looks like it's one.
About the brick facade and the windows, everything just looks very flat. There's no depth.
Right.
There's nothing, I don't know if there's something you could do even on the top of windows that looks like an arch. It's really not a part of the window. It could be something that's faux that had an arch, something. It just looks very flat, almost like a hospital, so to speak. And then,
A pattern.
yeah, my concern, I think I like that brick is kind of a pink color, and I think with that much brick, I don't know, we might be better off doing the other sample that you got that has some variation. Is that in front of you? Right there.
On
No.
your dais.
No, right.
Right there on the podium.
Yeah.
That brick.
Was-
brick.
Was that a different,
Yeah.
I think that would look better, a better variation than the pink, to be honest, that pink color. Yeah.
Yeah, you said
No, you said that one.
Saying it now.
Oh.
Yeah. So making that comment that I think that would look better maybe for the depth. I think that brick, although there's nothing wrong with it, it'll end up just looking like one color.
Sure.
So that would perhaps help with those flat lines, but I'm just wondering if there's something we can do on the windows so that it doesn't look so flat. And then I was concerned when you showed where you're driving down Cedar and you turn, I don't know if any of you remember as you're going down, you've got a lot of flat turn when you're going down Cedar, when you're coming down and you can see. So I guess that's just my concern. I think there's some architectural things that we can do. And again, not necessarily changing up everything that you have, but to give some more.
I think Low Country charm are the details. Whether it's rafter tails, whether it's.
You have to introduce yourself.
I'm Allie Omstutz with WODA, pre-construction officer. I've been kind of working on this presentation and then obviously letting our design team kind of take it from there. But the local company that I got the brick samples from, they didn't have like a storyboard of that, of the one we're thinking about, but it does have a lot of more variations.
Yes, and I think that would look better. It won't look like one color.
So the bottom one is that darker one on the board.
Right.
And the top one is just the single brick.
They both look good.
But I think we like that one because it was a little bit lighter, but we like dark.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is that is you're showing that brick, that's a single brick. You're not showing the variation.
That's like why I showed you the picture.
Gotcha.
That's a lot.
So yes, I do like that.
Better than
In
the
your
darker
rendering,
one.
it doesn't look
Tammy.
like, oh, sorry. In the rendering, it doesn't look like there's any variation. It looks like it's that one color.
Yes. No, it's.
So yes, I am okay with that. I just want to see variation and not look like one flat color.
I think that can be solved
Yes.
with a sample panel
Correct.
on
that's
site during
correct.
construction.
Yes.
Okay. One thing we haven't mentioned is, context. We've talked about the gas station, the this, the that, and it's gonna look better. But there's also a major project going across the street. And that's 500 North Main. This is what was taken to BAR. I don't know where that stands. You're welcome to look at it real quick, but, was that presented to BAR and what was the status of that? Do you know?
What specifically are you looking at?
The building.
It was what was submitted to BAR.
When they not, are they the renderings from the workshops or from the actual meeting?
I think it was from the meeting.
So there have been, I believe, 2 more workshops that were held since the public hearing. No decisions were made at that meeting. So there were, if that's the one from the public hearing, there are updated renderings, that were presented at the workshop. At this time, they haven't resubmitted to the board, the BAR for review any further.
Okay, I guess where I'm going with that is, if you look at this, I think it's got a little bit, assuming that project will move forward, it may not at all. I have no idea. But if you look at what was submitted, it's got a little bit more detailing. And maybe if some of that detailing was favorable, that detailing could be in here. And that could
We
it might
can-
address the window issue.
Right.
We can provide the documents that were submitted. I think we would technically need like a FOIA request, but we can provide those to y'all for reference.
Well, they can go on the agenda and look and click on it.
Yeah.
Well, these are commercial windows. They're curtain.
Well, that's an
All you gotta
office.
do-
That's a much more commercial building.
Yeah, that's an
I
office.
guess the
Okay.
question I want.
Or 202 window instead of a 101.
Again, it's those
You're looking-
little low
Sure.
country details.
Typical windows.
And
That would-
I mean, this is really helpful. Like, we do a lot of work in urban areas and there's always not a conflict, there's always a tension between replicating and interpreting.
Sure.
And so I think hearing you today, I had no problem doing 4/1 windows. We have details that expand the brick to do a 4-inch trim around it. We have all that. This was just, we were going the direction of more of an interpretive. I mean, clearly you guys have 1/1 windows here. You have paired 1/1 windows here. You have brick, not many 3-story buildings, but you have brick, right? So and you've got square columns. You've got railings that look like this. I mean, I could pull enough pieces, but what I'm hearing is you just want a little bit more details to match. Instead of being an interpretive, you want to go a little bit more on the historic.
Yes.
Swing the pendulum a little bit more historic.
Yes.
No problem with that. We have all the details. That trim that wraps up, I mean, we were trying to, on the tower where we've got the canopy above it, that trim is a standard, historic trim is 4.5 inches. The one, 5/4 by 6, 5/4 by 5, sorry. That's what that trim is that wraps around that. If you want me to add that thickness of trim around the brick, I mean, typically a historic building, you have a brick mold. You don't have wider trim at the brick. We tried to pull in some brick detailing. We can add some more detailing at the top of the brick. We can.
I think most of the public comment that I'm seeing or hearing is, and you said it, historic. This doesn't look like Somerville. But the comment is not, this doesn't look like contemporary Somerville. It doesn't look like historic Somerville. It doesn't look like but this building picked up some of those historic elements and just kind of imagined them in a new modern way. So I think what you said of changing some of those details would go a long way.
Can we agree that the mass of the building is acceptable and it's down to the detail level?
I would make, can you go to the shadow study? There's one study that, or one view that seems like it was cut off. So I don't know if it's true or not. So 8 a.m. winter, the shadow ends at the cut line of the photo. I don't know how far that shadow actually goes. It could go on to Oscars, and I'm sure they're not gonna like that. So if you can do a real shadow study, show us what the real repercussions are of this tall structure in reality, then we can probably come to an agreement on the mass.
So I understand a winter, as you know, a solar study, when the sun rises, it casts a shadow horizontal. It does not stop. That's why it's cut off. Like, I can't tell you that it's another 30 feet. And that sun hits that, it's horizontal with the building. Entire building, every building will cast a horizontal shadow.
Eventually it ends though. Eventually it ends.
Right, and you can see the progression in just from.
Again,
Eight
this is
AM.
not an argument point. You asked the question, can we agree upon the mass? My response is, if you show us the real shadow and not a story that a shadow never ends because we know it ends, I know it ends. I just want to make sure that our neighbors are not going to be affected negatively by a shadow. That's the enjoyment of Somerville. Somerville, every resident should enjoy sunlight.
You see how this one ends? See how that ends? Each hour? That's where that ends.
I don't know that.
Well, so what it says right here.
I don't see the profile.
They're all right here.
Again, I don't know why you want to argue. I don't see this,
It's obvious right there.
I don't see
In
this
front of your
jagged
face.
profile
Hang on,
on that
Look,
image.
look.
hang on. I want to point out, this building is around 42 feet high. The Somerville CPW building is 36 feet high.
Yeah. 6 feet short.
Yeah. So
One
it's
short.
it's 6 feet, regardless of the shadow.
Yeah.
We haven't heard any public outcry about the Somerville CPW
Glad
building.
you do that.
Hmm?
I'm glad you know.
Site of the PD. Yeah.
Code allows 55.
Yeah.
So I get the sense,
The code, we cannot conflict with.
I get the sense that as a board, maybe not as individuals, but as a board, we are okay with the
Mass.
basic massing of the building, for lack of a better term, okay? So I think at this point, it is dialing into the details of how that is executed. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Bingo.
Yes, and bring that back to us so we can see what that's going to look like. I can tell you, so I said, I need to see something different with the windows. And again, I don't want to put constraints on you as to what that looks like, but come back to us with something to show us. This is what we did differently with those windows to give some of that detail. So it doesn't look like a flat surface.
And I'm getting a sense from the board, the site plan is, needs to work on the details. Site plan's a site plan. We may not all agree, but I think as a board, that's where we are. So I think the site plan is probably a go, and I want y'all to correct me if I'm wrong. The site plan is probably a go.
Correct.
The basic massing of the building is probably a go. Both of those things are, let's work out the details.
Yes.
Okay?
See.
All right, so because we need to move this forward.
Correct.
Right? It's
Quickly.
forward, whether that's a denial or forward that a denial with recommendations and comments, or it's a approval with a recommendation and comments, whether that's preliminary or final. They're asking for preliminary, hoping to get final. Okay, so that's where we are. Before I call for the vote, is there anything else you all would like to say? Or anything, what do you need from us? If you need a minute, that's fine.
We need a final approval to meet our deadline. To be honest.
Why is that
yeah,
important? Why is that important?
Why is that important? We have to have people living on this site in 19 months from now.
Okay.
And it's just the time. I'm totally willing, if there's a way, and I don't know your structure, I've chaired historic boards, so I know that you, anyway. If you could get us a final approval with the condition we come back with details, totally fine. Totally fine working with staff on details. But we need something to know that we are moving, that in general, we can move forward with our approval. I mean, we're, I don't know, 80% done with construction drawings. Details are easy to change. We can do it in person. We can work with staff. She can bring it back. We've had approvals where it was up to the staff to approve it, but they would have to bring it back to you if they didn't feel comfortable with that approval, because they have to live with that, just like every project.
In talking about this and the way our permitting process works, you could give, and we've done this a few times, you could give final approval for the site. So they could submit for the disturbance permits, but not for the architecture, and condition that they will not get final vested approval for the structure itself and the architecture until they come back for final approval. That way you would be able to submit your site disturbance MS4 permits and get that process started.
All right, before we kind of close this, this is not a public hearing. Okay. But is there anyone from the public that would like to speak about this project, whether it's for it, against it, whatever? Okay, you have to come up. Uh-huh. Yeah. You have to come up and state your name, please.
My name is Penny Merriman. I live at 115 Dorchester Avenue. I've over 35 years. I want to thank, this is the first time I've come to a DRB meeting, review board meeting. And I'm so impressed with the questions that you ask and working with people, because it sounds like that they're very amenable to your ideas, and it makes a win-win for everybody. I like that. I really appreciate this. It's not a question about affordable housing. It's not a question about, are we in favor of growth? You aren't responsible for approval of growth, but the details. And I mean, this could be a pretty building, and it sounds like that you can do that. And we will all appreciate that, and we'll all be happy with it. I would get rid of the blue if I were on the board. I get rid of the blue, but anyway, and some of the other details, I just want to say thank you. I thought that I was going to get up here and be kind of like doing this, but just y'all have done a wonderful job, and thank you for being responsive.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Anybody else? Robert. Sure, you introduce yourself.
Yes, I will. Chris, I'm Robert Pratt, and y'all, I know most of you up there. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen for the third time about what is so sorely needed in Somerville. I mean, we need this. And I say we need it because I own the property. I've had a sign on it for 18 years. Nobody in this room has tried to buy it. You could have bought it. I've had banks look at it. I've had all kind of people self-storage. I don't want that. I don't want another, fast food or a bank. But this is a needed component in Somerville. And I appreciate you trying to work and ask the hard questions, because these guys, I think, will do it. They'll find a way to get home. So thank you for listening. And I hope it works.
Thank you, sir. All right, there you go. That's where we are. So, you know what they want. We know what we need, what the community has expressed opinions about. Would someone go ahead, Peter?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Based upon what you heard on the architecture, feedback from us, all perspective, how quickly can you generate images so that we can look at them. A day, if it's a day, that makes a big difference in our vote. If it's 3 weeks, that makes a difference in our vote.
I think it's 3 weeks, to be honest with you, because here's what sorry, usually I'm loud enough. I think it's 3 weeks, because I want to be careful about this. And now that I've heard more replication, I really do want to drive through the streets and take pictures and like really take the time. We were trying to evoke a feeling, but I'm hearing the pendulum swing much more toward, show me examples of where you're pulling this from. That's going to take a little bit of time. And where I was going earlier is like, what we're talking about now is cladding. It's the window style. I mean, if the mass, that's where I was kind of going, like, we can move forward and even come back. Assuming we can move forward with the site plan, we can come back with new elevation. We can do it virtual. You can have a special hearing, whatever. But I hear you better now of what you want to see, and being able to share cladding details, and we kind of roll up our sleeves and work on it. Totally fine. And I'm willing to do it. I mean, if we have to do it in a public meeting, that's fine. I've been in public meetings like this where somebody volunteered to work with us. And you just said, yes, we're going to approve it, given this person's approval to work with them, whether it's staff or a board member. I think our objective today is we want to keep moving forward.
All right. Denny, did you look like you wanted to say something or no? Okay.
I did. I'd like to say that I like the direction where this is going. If I can feel where it's going, and as the developer, the owner, we have worked with David Maurer now for probably about 12 years. We've done so many different properties together. We can discuss and debate, but we will make this happen that meets the needs and the requirements of Somerville. And I'd like to make sure we get the number of this lady, because I want to discuss the blue. Maybe we could, if she's got it, we can. But we've done blue quite recently in many different places. It's quite in at the moment. We can definitely do something else. But again, I'd appreciate everybody being here tonight.
All right. So would someone like to make a motion? Or you can talk, if you want to talk about how to make the appropriate motion, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do.
I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve the site
Site only.
only.
So you could motion to approve the site. I don't know if you'd want to condition it that if there are changes requested from the tree protection board, that those come back. Or those are handled at a staff level with the town arborist.
Yeah.
Okay. So you wouldn't really need to mention that. We can.
What if the motion were, and I don't think, Bill, you made a motion, you're talking about a motion.
Right.
What if we made a motion that said final approval with conditions that they come back to work through the architectural details?
That's even better. Final approval? Let's do that. Yeah. Overall, final overall approval.
And that would be
With
what-
those conditions come back.
we need to see the.
So the vested approval letter that I would send would say that it's for the site, and that the architecture of the building has to come back before the board for final approval. Once that was received, we'd send an updated letter, excuse me.
I think we need to clarify about for the site.
Yeah.
Not just.
Well, there's the agenda item is,
Be able to move on, right? But then we'll be able to move on.
That's, y'all are able to modify the approval how you see fit. It doesn't.
Do you need this interim approval from the city of Somerville for any financing, for any state issues?
to submit
Yeah,
to,
we would use that approval letter, and. I
But
thought
if we
where you were
broke it
going
down-
Was, an approval for the project, the building and the site, with the details coming back to you guys of the building. That's cleaner than.
I
just
think
doing
that's
just the
cleaner
site.
as well.
Let's do that.
A final,
That's my motion.
But
I am not
But
sure
there's
that we
motion.
can do that is what I'm saying.
Bill made a motion for, restate your motion, Bill?
Make motion for approval of the project with details to come back on the building, so.
Okay, so we need a second to discuss it.
Y'all can second it to open discussion.
Okay, second that. We can open the discussion.
Okay. So Bill's motion is for final approval with conditions that architectural details come back.
Right.
Okay, and Becca, you had a comment.
I have never seen a vested approval. That wouldn't qualify as a vested approval because it's coming back. So I don't know if that actually helps them. Because in essence, you're not giving final approval.
So it'd be, yeah, that would mean that it would have to come back to the
That's
board
not what final approval
versus
is.
coming back to, say, a subcommittee or staff. Yeah, that motion means it has to,
Well, it needs to come back to the committee, a committee or the full board.
If y'all are given a letter that says you have vested approval for the site, I mean, again, with the tree protection board, I'm not sure how we do that.
yeah, I mean, if the tree protection board doesn't grant them, then they may have to come back.
Right. So you could do, I understand wanting to make it clean, but if y'all are issued a letter that says you have vested approval for the site as proposed, would that hold you up from submitting for your MS4 permitting?
No, that would work. I mean, if you could you approve the preliminary then for the building tonight?
Yeah, you could make a motion to separate. Yeah.
At the end of the day, they just want to submit for an early site package. So how do they?
At the end of the day, we want to submit for everything, but we'll take, we understand where we are in the process. I mean, we're working here together to try and make it.
Sure.
If we could get that would be great. If we could approve the preliminary, then we'll come back and we'll submit all the designs 3 weeks. It'll be basically your next meeting, I guess, is what
You could make a motion to separate the project into site and architecture, give final approval for the site.
I think,
and
I feel like
preliminary.
I just heard they're comfortable with a preliminary.
for
rather
the
than
building.
Final.
For the building, yes, for the build. We need final for the site, yeah. Otherwise, she loses her job.
It's a lot of pressure.
Can you explain that? I'm confused.
But, yeah,
What do you need from us
but come up to the mic to explain.
in order to keep your process with the state moving?
So as Denny was saying, I think it would be helpful to have final approval on the site and then preliminary on the building. The final on the site is so that we can submit for our site permits. We have to go through the coastal zone consistency process, which takes several months. So we want to be able to get that in and submitted.
And
Right.
y'all are aware that obviously if the tree protection board asks for
Yeah.
changes, that may trigger you coming back. If it's something minor at a staff level that really won't affect DRB approval, we can assess that then. But just so we're all on the same page about, we've got a lot of moving pieces
Yes,
and we
a lot of moving
understand that. We want to make it work for y'all. So, yeah, does that help y'all?
No.
No, you could make it one
I
motion.
think Bill can amend his motion
Yes.
Bend the motion.
to,
Two, final approval on the site, preliminary approval on the building. Details to be submitted later. And we can have a special meeting if y'all need that too.
or you could submit some of the things to staff to, hey, does it look like we're tracking right? Beck, is that fair?
You
Or-
can, and we can pass it along, but there
But-
can't be any communication between y'all and the board.
Well, what I mean is submit it to y'all, to you in the interim, and you're kind of fielding questions until they come back to the board. It's not
Absolutely.
like putting it all on you, it's just,
No, absolutely. We're
Okay.
happy to meet with y'all as many times as we need on a staff level. Cause it's my job.
okay, so. Bill made a amendment. I think we have to vote on the amendment.
I just want to clarify, for the applicant, you had no objection to anything that we discussed for the site, correct? No objection.
Well, I mean,
Talked about
we talked about a lot of detail.
bioswale and
details.
the fence moving and what type of fence and looking at Sixth Street and all this other,
I would,
no major objection.
all right, to be a little more clear, I would say that's a final approval on site with conditions of the details we talked about. The park, the fence, all the stuff.
Tree board.
Yeah, it's contingent upon tree board review.
Okay.
Okay.
So that,
We talked about a lot of really great ideas. Just for the record, for the conditions, can we try to itemize what, because they were,
Yes.
you had really good suggestions. But I
I'll
want
do it right now.
Board, like,
So,
what's the requirement?
We talked about making the bioretention more of a park and design it with park elements like maybe low retaining walls or enhancing the planting, reducing the fencing. Talked about maybe that element wraps around Sixth Street. Talked about enhancing the pedestrian experience out the front door. So it's more of a plaza or a courtyard. Benches. That's what we had on site.
Okay. Can you pull up the site plan again? I just want to make sure.
On that first note of extending, or maybe it was your second one. Bioretention around, if it's not our property,
It's not the bioretention, it's some of those, if there's brick columns, vertical elements that would go around, not bioretention that would go around.
oh,
could I ask a question just for clarity on a staff level? So for y'all to submit for your MS4 permits, your site disturbance permits, do you technically need a letter that says you have vested approval per SE state, yada, 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 whatever the law reference is? Or would something suffice from the town of Somerville stating that we are giving you permission to move forward with your site permitting while you continue through the design review process?
I think that would be fine. I think we're more going off of your requirement of that we had to have DRB approval before we submitted anything for site. So it's really more internal.
So my concern is that we're still talking through these little details that y'all want to see. Obviously whatever you hand down to staff will make work. But my concern is we're talking about a lot of different details here that y'all will not see again.
And we'll see them.
You'll
They'll
see
bring it
them,
back.
but they will get that vested approval for the
I'll tell you
site.
this,
So I think it makes it,
y'all will bring them back when you come back to look at the architecture.
I'm just concerned, Chris, about the conflicting.
I-
I just don't want to cause an issue where there isn't one. So,
I-
and that's why I asked the question about if we were able to send you a letter that said you can move forward with your site permitting, maybe y'all grant preliminary approval. I know we just talked about separating everything out. But if we are able to say, they're continuing through the design process and we can send you the letter that says you can move forward. I think that's much cleaner. Easier.
As long as we get a site letter.
does that allow us to submit?
Yes, I mean, that's through the town, so we would just send you a letter that would say you can go ahead and start the process.
And y'all want to submit to OCRM too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't need that for ourselves.
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand, if there was any sort of funding or anything like that that would be held up if you did not have the final vested approval letter.
So Becca, are you saying they need to do preliminary on both site and building?
Yes, I think that's easier. And if they don't have an issue with that.
Okay, we're gonna move forward.
Okay.
So,
I make a motion, whatever she said.
well, I think what you're wanting to do is amend your motion to say preliminary for site and building
Preliminary approval for both site and building
with the
Motion.
conditions we discussed.
with the conditions discussed.
Clear as mud.
Regurgitated.
Okay, so you have to come back to the board. We think you're tracking correctly. You know what details are important to us and, okay, all right. So Bill made a motion. Is there a second? Or did we already second?
I second.
Second. All vote in favor for preliminary approval with conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Y'all can't leave just yet. I think we have to make a motion to defer, the comeback shack. Tammy's trying to run out of here.
We got to make a motion. We have to make.
Where are you going?
To defer it back.
I make the motion to defer the comeback shack
Yes, I second.
preliminary approval.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Can we get a,
Seconded?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I need a motion for adjournment by Tammy, Jared.